The moment the red light broke through the sky, the entire sea god's island seemed to shake. Following this, everyone could clearly see that 6 huge blood-red pillars of light suddenly rose around the sea god's island. From what the seahorse Douluo had said earlier, everyone knew that this light had come from the holy pillars of the other 6 guardians. What kind of test was this? It could cause all 7 holy pillars to shake at the same time. Seahorse Douluo had learned something new today. Not only did he see the light of the sea god push people away, but he also saw that all 7 holy pillars were responding at the same time. That wasn't all. The 7 pillars of light converged into a single point in the sky. In the next second, the blood-red light faded, and an extremely dazzling golden light fell from that single point. This light instantly landed on Tang San's body. Following this, 9 golden light screens surrounded him and turned into streams of light that entered his forehead. At this moment, a golden trident mark appeared on Tang San's forehead. It was completely different from the others. What kind of test is this? Xiao Wu asked in a daze. Tang San also asked in confusion. Senior, you said that the red test is the most powerful test. Then what is my golden test? Could be the top 9 tests. Upon hearing this question, Seahorse Douluo shook his head in confusion. I don't know either. The scene just now was too majestic. The red and golden light caused the entire sea god's island to shake. This kind of power shocked sea god Douluo. Furthermore, he was completely unable to imagine what sort of trial such as this would be. Senior, you don't know either? Everyone was confused. It was like going to the supermarket to buy something and asking what it was, only to be told that they didn't know. Although this kind of thing could happen, it was still a little unbelievable. At the side, Lin Feng's face was full of, I knew it's like this. Tang San's talent was already heaven-defying. Not only did he obtain the recognition of the vast sea cosmic shroud, but he also caught the attention of the sea god. Now that he had been taught by Lin Feng, his talent was even more outstanding than in the original book. Wouldn't it be easy for him to obtain the 9 tests of the sea god? On the sea god's island in the god realm, Poseidon was very happy. After waiting for so many years, he finally met a suitable soul master to inherit the sea god's divine seat. This guy was so young, but he was already a soul sage. Most importantly, his soul power was extremely condensed. This kind of talent was more than enough to obtain the sea god's divine seat. In the lower realm, everyone was asking Seahorse Douluo what the 9 golden tests represented. Suddenly, a leisurely voice sounded from afar. This is the first time something like this has happened since the birth of the sea god's island. What you're about to undergo isn't the 9 tests of the top tier, but the 9 tests of the sea god. When this voice sounded, it sounded very distant. But as soon as it sounded, a noble and elegant middle-aged woman appeared in front of everyone. This was Poseidon. Her aura was very similar to Bibi Dong's, but she was less domineering and more gentle. She had a head of beautiful blue hair, and she wore a red robe that outlined her slender figure perfectly. When Poseidon appeared, Seahorse Douluo immediately bowed and said, I have failed in my duty. I was unable to complete the instructions. Please punish me, Reverend. It's not your fault. This is the first time I've seen something like this. Poseidon waved her hand. After she finished speaking, she immediately turned her gaze to Tang San. More accurately, she looked at the trident mark on his forehead. Young man, I've been waiting here for more than 100 years after I became the Reverend. Can you tell me where you came from? Poseidon asked gently. As a rank 99 peerless Douluo, Poseidon was usually very imposing. However, in front of Tang San, who had obtained the 9 tests of the sea god, she didn't put on any airs. She was very approachable. I am Tang San. I come from the Heavendo Empire's Martial Soul Alliance. Tang San cupped his hands and spoke in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. He was now the Alliance Master of the Martial Soul Alliance. His words and actions represented the Martial Soul Alliance. According to Feng Ji's words, even if a god was in front of him, he would face him with his head held high. Therefore, no matter how noble this reverend status was, he wouldn't bow down to her. Tang San? That's a good name. Poseidon smiled. If Tang Sen had said that he was from the Clear Sky sect, she might have thought of Tang Chun. However, Tang Sen had said that he was from a martial soul alliance. She only thought that it was a new power. After that, she looked at Tang San and said solemnly, Tang San, from now on, you have to remember that after obtaining the 9 tests of the Sea God, your status is the highest on the Sea God's island. No one can accept your courtesy, including me. Apart from the tests, we will do our best to fulfill any of your requests. Chapter 480. My status is the highest? Why? Tang San's face carried a trace of astonishment. That's because you obtained the unprecedented 9 trials of the Sea God. Poseidon said with a serious face. The 9 tests of the Sea God means that you will inherit the position of the Sea God after passing all 9 tests. You are now a candidate for the position of the Sea God. Everyone held their breaths when they saw Poseidon's solemn expression. Is he the successor of the Sea God? He will become a god after passing all 9 tests? Although they had heard from Lin Feng that it was possible to pass the test to become a god, they were still shocked when they saw it with their own eyes. I see. Tang San nodded. Poseidon was impressed by Tang San's calmness. You have a steady heart. No wonder you passed the 9 tests of the Sea God. Due to his identity as the successor of the Sea God, Poseidon looked at Tang San like a mother looking at her son. She then turned to Seahorse Douluo and said, Oh yeah, pass down my order later. These 9 people will be the guests of the Sea God's island. Treat them like slaves, especially Tang San. No one is allowed to offend or neglect him. Yes, the Seahorse Douluo, who is also known as Oya, replied respectfully. Poseidon continued, By the way, these 9 people will stay in your Seahorse City. Tomorrow, gather the other 6 people for a meeting on the Sea God's island. Now that there was a soul master who could pass the 9 trials of the Sea God, the importance of the Sea God's island was self-evident. For the sake of Tang San and the others, Baisaishi had to reorganize the Sea God's island. Everything had to give way to them. Yes, Oya replied again. After Poseidon gave her instructions, she looked at Tang San again and said with a smile, To be able to pass the 9 trials of the Sea God, I believe that your talent must be extremely outstanding. In the future, you will definitely pass the Sea God's test. By the way, you must remember that every one of you must pass at least 1 test every year. Otherwise, you will only be waiting for death. When they heard the consequences of death, no one was afraid. This was because they were already mentally prepared. They were confident that they would pass all the tests. Poseidon nodded in satisfaction. Very good. It seems like you're all prepared. Oh yeah, take good care of our guests. After that, Poseidon did not say anything else and disappeared instantly. Just like when she came, except for Lin Feng, no one else saw how she left. So powerful. I feel like he's about the same level as Lord Mia, Ning Rongrong exclaimed. Lord Mia is clearly stronger, Xiao Wu emphasized. At this moment, the Seahorse Douluo's voice rang out in everyone's ears. Distinguished guests, please follow me. I will bring you to Seahorse City. There were a total of 7 small cities on the Sea God's island. They were close to the 7 holy pillars, and they were named after the 7 guardians. Seahorse City was one of them. At that moment, Tang San said, Senior, we still have someone here who has not been tested. Yes, Feng Ge has not been tested yet. Senior, please test Feng Ge, Xiao Wu said. Hearing this, everyone came back to their senses. Lin Feng had not been tested yet. The main reason was that Tang San's 9 tests of the Sea God was too famous. On top of that, a powerhouse like Poseidon had appeared. For a moment, they had forgotten about this matter. Even Sea God Douluo had forgotten about it. Oh, I forgot. I will activate the holy pillar now, Sea God Douluo said quickly. Seeing this, everyone quickly said, Feng Ge, do your best. Get a 9 tests of the Sea God. In everyone's opinion, Lin Feng's cultivation talent was higher than everyone else's. If Tang San could get a 9 tests of the Sea God, Lin Feng would at least get a 9 tests of the Sea God. They did not know if there were more difficult tests after the 9 tests of the Sea God. Otherwise, they would have definitely asked Lin Feng to get a 9 tests of the sea god. Sea god Douluo smiled when he heard this. The 9 tests of the sea god were the most difficult tests. Now that someone had gotten a 9 tests of the sea god, it meant that the sea god had already chosen his successor. No matter how powerful Lin Feng was, he should not be able to get a 9 tests of the sea god. At most, he should be able to get a top 8 test. While thinking about this, he activated the sea god's pillar. Then again, why did he think that the top 8 tests of the sea god would appear so casually? At the same time, the light of the sea god shone down and enveloped Lin Feng's body. Like everyone else, Lin Feng did not feel anything. Everything was very quiet. Everyone held their breaths when they saw this scene. They were thinking about how strong Lin Feng would get a 9 tests of the sea god's pillar. In contrast to the calm on the sea god's pillar, sea god Poseidon was in a daze in the sea god's temple. What happened? Time in the god's realm was different from Douluo's world. A few minutes might have passed in Douluo's world. In the god's realm, it was a matter of an instant. In Poseidon's opinion, he had just discovered a soul master with heaven-defying talent. Then, he gave him the 9 tests of the sea god and groomed him as his successor. But in the next moment, another soul master with even more heaven-defying talent appeared. Through the light of the sea god, he could sense that Lin Feng had an extremely strong power in his body. It was the kind that did not belong to anyone. This meant that he was extremely strong and could become a god very soon. It would be best if such a person could inherit the mantle of the sea god. But he had just given the 9 tests of the sea god to the first person. He could not just take it back. What should he do with the second person? His talent was too good. He did not want to give up at all. After hesitating for a long time, Poseidon waved his hand and sent down the 9 tests of the sea god again. 2 sea god candidates? So be it. When the time came, the 2 of them would become the sea god together. Although the power of the godly seat would be split, it was not a problem. When the 2 of them ascended to the god realm, he would compensate them. In any case, he wanted to take in both of these outstanding soul masters. Just as Poseidon sent down the 9 trials of the sea god, the seahorse pillar on sea god's island began to change color. It turned a bright red. In the next second, a red pillar of light shot up into the sky and startled the entire sea god's island. At the same time, the other 6 pillars also released a dazzling red light that pierced through the sky. When the 7 pillars of light gathered, a golden pillar of light shone on Lin Feng's body. It's actually the 9 tests of the sea god again. When Seahorse Douluo saw this, he was completely stunned. 2 9 tests of the sea god, 3 top-tier 7 tests, and 3 black-ranked 6 tests. Today's events were enough for Seahorse Douluo to remember for the rest of his life. The other guardians and all the residents of the sea god's island also remembered this scene deeply in their hearts. Although they did not know what this meant, they knew that something big must have happened if the entire sea god's island was shaken. 9 golden pillars of light wrapped around Lin Feng. Then, they turned into a stream of light and imprinted themselves on his forehead. Lin Feng did not resist. Instead, he took the initiative to accept it. This energy contained a trace of the sea god's divine power. However, it did not have any consciousness. In other words, it was an ownerless energy. Lin Feng could remove it at any time. Furthermore, this energy was a bridge between him and the sea god. If the sea god descended on the continent of Douluo one day, he would be able to sense it. Therefore, Lin Feng did not resist. Instead, he took the initiative to accept it. It's the 9 tests of the sea god. It seems like this is the most difficult test. Fengge is indeed Fengge. Oscar was the first to speak. From his tone, it seemed like he was not satisfied. Seahorse Douluo felt helpless. This was the 9 tests of the sea god. If he passed it, he would become the sea god. If he was not satisfied with this test, then wouldn't he be the weakest of the weakest? Fengge, congratulations, Tang San said with a smile. Everyone expressed their congratulations one after another. Flattering words were quickly spouted out from their mouths. At this moment, Posidi returned. No matter how knowledgeable and powerful she was, her face was filled with shock. Suemo had passed the 9 tests of the sea god twice. This was completely beyond her understanding. She had never thought that something like this would happen. Therefore, she was extremely surprised. Another 9 tests of a sea god. Po Ziti swallowed her saliva and asked Lin Feng, "May I know your name?" Lin Feng. Lin Feng said with a smile. "To be honest, even I am shocked. The sea god has assigned a second 9 tests of the sea god." Po Ziti quickly said, "However, the sea god must have his reasons for doing so. I will follow the sea god's instructions and guide the two of you to complete the test." She then turned to Oya and said, "When you pass down the order later, add another sentence. Treat Lin Feng the same way you treat Tang San. No one is to neglect or offend him." "Yes," the seahorse Douluo replied in an excited manner. As a loyal follower of the sea god, how could he not be excited to see the birth of 2 inheritors of the sea god in one day? Po Ziti seemed to be excited by the appearance of the second 9 tests of the sea god. Hence, she added another sentence to the crowd. "The mark on your forehead represents your identity. When you walk around the sea god's island, please don't cover it up. With the mark on your forehead, you can seek help from anyone you meet on the sea god's island." Po Ziti looked at Lin Feng and Tang San a few more times before she left. At this moment, the seahorse also suppressed the excitement in his heart. He bowed slightly and said, "Everyone, please follow me. I will take you to Seahorse City." "All right." The crowd nodded and followed him. On the way, Douluo explained the situation on the sea god's island to the crowd. At the same time, he also answered some of their questions. In just half an hour, the crowd had a rough understanding of the sea god's island. Firstly, there were 7 big cities. There were more than 1,000 people in each city. There were even more than 2,000 people in each city. These people were all soul masters. Hence, the sea god's island was extremely powerful. On top of that, the sea god's island was covered by the sea god's divine power. The strength of the sea god's island was boosted. This was why the martial spirit hall was defeated when they attacked the sea god's island. Aside from the introduction of the city, the seahorse also introduced the local customs and customs of the island, as well as some of the geographical distribution. He also explained the supply of food and the communication between the sea god's island and the outside world. Under such circumstances, the group was quickly brought to Seahorse City. With the seahorse leading the way, everyone that they met was extremely respectful toward them. Soon, the group was settled down. Douluo went out and spread the news of the head consecrator's order to the entire island. It wouldn't be long before Lin Feng and the rest were warmly welcomed wherever they went. Now, in a hall, Lin Feng and the others were having a gathering. Other than Xue Qinghe, everyone had been tested today. Hence, they had to plan how much time they would spend on the test. As for the content of the test, everyone had to discuss it, especially Xue Qinghe. He didn't pass the test. What should he do now? Among these questions, the most urgent one was Xue Qinghe. After all, he didn't pass the test. In everyone's opinion, he was wasting time here. Even Xue Qinghe himself thought the same. Tang San asked, "Crown Prince, what do you plan to do now that you haven't passed the test?" Xue Qinghe was confused. The sea god said that there was another god's power in his body. However, he didn't know. It wasn't that he didn't know what this power was. He knew that it should be the power of the angel god. However, the question was, how could he obtain this power? How could he pass the test of the angel god? This was what he wanted to know the most. "I'm not sure either." Xue Qinghe looked at Lin Feng. Obviously, he wanted Lin Feng to help him decide. After all, in Xue Qinghe's heart, Lin Feng was the deacon of the Marvel family. It could be said that he was his immediate superior. Furthermore, Lin Feng was too mysterious. He knew everything. Perhaps he could give him an idea. "Actually, you can stay," Lin Feng said. "Stay? But I didn't pass the test." "Stay on the sea god's island to cultivate?" Xue Qinghe was puzzled. "You can consider it as cultivation." Lin Feng said, "There's only one difference between having a test on the sea god's island and not having one. The former will give you a reward if you pass, while the latter won't. However, have you ever thought that the test itself is a kind of training for yourself? Do you remember what I said before? The god's test will quickly increase a soul master's strength. However, the main reason is not the test reward, but the test itself. Therefore, if your highness stays, you will still gain a lot. I see. Shueqing nodded. Then I'll stay. Lin Feng's words made sense. The test itself was the most important. Furthermore, if Xue Qinghe returned to Heaven-Do City now, he would have nothing to do and might even encounter danger. Therefore, it was safer to stay with Lin Feng and the others on the Sea God's Island. Back then, he had a premonition that following Lin Feng and the others was the right choice. Now, he would not retreat. Chapter 481. With Xue Qinghe's decision to stay, their first problem was solved. Now, there was a second core issue, and that was their future plans. How long were they going to stay on Sea God's Island? When were they going back? As for the content of the test, it wasn't urgent. They could talk about it later. Xiao was the first to ask. Feng Ge, I heard from Douluo that the test is extremely difficult. We have to complete one in a year. If we complete all of them, it'll take a long time. What about the Martial Soul Alliance? What about the Academy? Xiao used her soul power to control her voice. What about Feng Ge, Xiao Ying, Daming, and Erming? How long are we going to stay here? Only Lin Feng heard her last sentence. No one else could hear it. Dai Mubai said, I didn't expect the test to take so long. I was planning to go back in a month. Even though the Star Luo Empire was very stable at the moment, if Dai Mubai didn't return, there might be rumors that he had already died outside of the empire. Therefore, in order not to cause any trouble, he had to go back when the time came. Don't worry about that. Lin Feng smiled. I told Mr. Destroy that I'll come back to Sea God's Island in half a month. He'll bring us back then. So that's how it is. I'm relieved. Dai Mubai instantly smiled. Oscar said, Mr. Destroy is so strong. He'll bring us back in half a day. We don't have to worry about anything. Thanos was like Lin Feng in everyone's hearts. They were both invincible. Therefore, they were all relieved when they heard the news. Xiao nodded. That's good. I thought we wouldn't be able to go back for a year. Lin Feng said, don't think of the test as too difficult, but don't think of it as too easy. Seahorse Douluo can only be considered a genius, but you are all monsters. Therefore, the test given by the Sea God won't be dangerous for you. It'll be difficult at most. But what I want to say is that you have to overcome this difficulty and work hard like crazy. Didn't they say that you have to complete the test once a year? That won't do. My requirement is 3 months. Every 3 months, you have to complete a test. After all, the test given by the Sea God was based on the standards of the genius soul masters in Douluo's world. In the original work, these people were able to complete it. Now, they were much, much stronger than in the original work. That was why Lin Feng had set such a strict condition. He had to complete the test every 3 months. By doing this, he was actually exerting pressure on them. Otherwise, what would they do if they relaxed after seeing that a year was so long? Now that they had a 3-month time limit, they could use pressure to crazily squeeze out their potential. It had to be known that only 3 years had passed since they finished eating the immortal medicine. They didn't want to be like Lin Feng, who could easily absorb the medicinal efficacy. There was still a lot of medicinal efficacy in their bodies that hadn't been dissolved, especially Xiao Wu and Tang San. They had eaten some immortal medicine later on. If they were to undergo the test under extreme pressure, their strength would increase rapidly. 3 months it is. I will definitely pass the test. Ma Hongjun said with a determined face. Now, because they didn't know what the test was and didn't have any concept of it, they were all very confident. After Ma Hongjun finished speaking, Ning Rongrong also said, That's right. Isn't it just 3 months? We can definitely complete it within 3 months. Good. You're all very energetic. Lin Feng smiled and said, Look at what your first test is. For a moment, many people sensed it. Dai Mubai, who had seen it before, said directly, The name of my test is very strange. It's called Crossing the Light of the Sea God. I have to climb the stairs to the forbidden area of the Sea God Island. I have to climb 108 steps. Boss Dai is the same. I also have to cross the light of the Sea God and climb the stairs. Ma Hongjun said with a smile. Me too. However, I have to climb 136 steps. It seems that the top test is a little more difficult than the black test. Ning Rongrong said proudly. Me too, 136 steps, Xiao Wu said. Zhu nodded. Me too. Oscar looked at Tang San and Lin Feng and said, Fenggu and third brother are both taking the 9C God tests. It should be a little more difficult than us. That's right. Tang San nodded and said, my first test is to cross 2 times the light of the sea god. I have to climb 333 steps. Me too. Lin Feng smiled. Hearing this, Oscar was slightly stunned. How is this double? This is more than 3 times the amount of our black level assessment. That's not the point. The point is that you have to complete this test within 3 months. Lin Feng said, Your Highness, you will also have to cross the light of the sea god with us. As for the number of steps, of course, the more the better. Influenced by the atmosphere, Xueqing had nodded with a determined face. I will do my best. Very good. Lin Feng smiled and said, Since everyone's test is the same, let's not delay any longer. Let's go take a look at the light of the sea god. The group had eaten on the ship before. Now that they were taking the test, not long after arriving at the sea god island, they really had nothing to do. Okay. Let's see how powerful the light of the sea god is. The group was in high spirits. Just like that, they arrived at the city and told a sea soul master about their request to go to the forbidden area of the sea god's island. Soon, the sea soul master found a purple-robed sea soul master. Honored guests, do you want to go to the forbidden area of the sea god's island? He asked respectfully. In particular, he looked at Lin Feng and Tang San as if they were gods. After all, the golden trident on their foreheads was too noble and carried a trace of the sea god's aura. These sea soul masters were fascinated by it. Seahorse Douluo had gone out to deal with something. Otherwise, the titled Soul Master Douluo would have come to receive them in person. Yes, lead the way, Lin Feng said casually. Honored guests, please follow me. The purple-robed sea soul master didn't hesitate at all. He immediately led the group out of the city. At the same time, he said, Seahorse City is still some distance away from the forbidden area of the sea god's island. It's about 200 miles away. Honored guests, should we speed up? If they walked slowly, they wouldn't be able to cover 200 miles in an afternoon. Therefore, they could only use their soul power to speed up. Lead the way. Go at full speed. Don't worry about us, Lin Feng said. Hearing this, the purple-robed sea soul master nodded immediately and said, Yes. After he finished speaking, he immediately released his soul rings. 2 yellow, 3 purple, and 2 black soul rings. He was a 7-ring soul sage. Although his soul ring combination wasn't perfect, it was still very powerful. Now that he had unleashed his martial soul, his entire body suddenly sped up and rushed forward. Lin Feng told him to go at full speed and ignore them. However, this sea soul master believed that Lin Feng and the others weren't very strong. If he went at full speed, they wouldn't be able to catch up. Therefore, although he was running very fast, he still held back some of his strength and didn't use his full strength. However, when he ran a few steps and turned back, he was shocked. This was because the 9 people behind him were following him with relaxed expressions. Furthermore, this wasn't the main point. The main point was that not only did these 9 people not release their soul rings, they didn't even possess their martial souls. They only used their physical fitness to catch up to him. Seeing this, he didn't dare to hold back. He immediately sprinted forward with all his strength. The 9 people behind him were also very relaxed and followed him. Of course, it wasn't that they didn't use their soul power. It was just that they had very strong control over their soul power. Now that their soul power was circulating in their bodies, it didn't leak out. Xueqing's words were taught by Lin Feng when he first joined the Marvel family. Because he was stronger and his comprehension ability was not weak, he learned very quickly. Now, his standard was not much worse than Oscar's. Just like that, the group of people arrived at the forbidden area after half an hour of running at full speed. The center of the sea god's island was a ring of seawater. In the middle of the ring of seawater, there was a very tall island. It was about 500 meters tall. The island emitted a faint layer of golden light, like a veil, enveloping the entire island. The most eye-catching thing was the top of the island. There was a crystal-clear white building. Because of the direction, everyone couldn't see it very clearly. They could only see the huge, white stone pillars at the edge. This was an island within an island, the real sea god's island. Because of the golden light, the only way to the island was the stairs in front of them. The purple-clothed sea spirit master said with a pious face, "That is the place where you will pass the test. There are a total of 1,001 steps. Only the sea god's guardians who pass the black rank test and above are qualified to step on the steps and enter the sea god's palace to worship. Otherwise, the light of the sea god will stop you. Everyone, please don't make any noise when you take the test later, so as not to disturb the sea god. Thank you for leading the way." Lin Feng smiled at the sea spirit master. Then he waved his hand. "Go in and take the test." At this moment, the purple-clothed sea spirit master seemed to have thought of something and said, "Everyone, during the test, if you can't bear it, just quickly retreat. Don't force yourself." Okay. After nodding, everyone didn't hesitate. One by one, they used their various abilities and directly flew into the ring of seawater that was about 200 meters wide. Everyone realized that other than Xue Qinghe, when they entered the island, a faint layer of light appeared on their bodies. There was black, red, and gold. In any case, it was the color that everyone had when they took the test. As for Xue Qinghe, because he didn't take the test, his body didn't emit any light. At this moment, an invisible and huge pressure condensed out of thin air and pressed down on Xue Qinghe. In the middle of the ring of seawater, the waves rolled and a strange fish appeared out of thin air, charging straight at Xue Qinghe. Clearly, the protective mechanism of the sea god's island was activated to eliminate the enemy, Xue Qinghe, because he didn't have the symbol of the test on him. On the other side of the sea, the purple-clothed sea spirit master's face changed. Not good. He thought that all 9 of them had the symbol of the test, but he didn't expect that one of them didn't. Now that he was attacked by the sea god, if he wasn't careful, he could die. After all, under the suppression of the sea god's light, it would be difficult to block the attack. But at this moment, Lin Feng casually waved his hand, and a trace of the golden light on his body separated and covered Xue Qinghe's body. In the next moment, the pressure suddenly disappeared, and the fish automatically retreated into the sea. How is this possible? The purple-clothed sea spirit master was completely shocked. He didn't think that the halo condensed from the test could be shared with others. This kind of thing had never happened before. Although he was puzzled, he couldn't ask these people anymore, because after the crisis was resolved, the group of people acted as if they didn't encounter any danger at all and continued to walk up the long staircase. In front of the staircase, everyone looked up and exclaimed at the magnificence of the building. But they didn't lament too much. Lin Feng directly said, "Let's begin." "Okay," Ma Hongjun said arrogantly. "Look carefully, this is just a small staircase. Today, I'm going to directly walk up the 108 steps." As soon as he finished speaking, he directly rushed toward the staircase. The others were also full of confidence as they rushed up the stairs. They wanted to use the momentum to climb up the stairs as if it was an ordinary flight of stairs. But, bang, bang, Ma Hongjun and Dai Mubai, who were the front, seemed to have smashed into an invisible wall the moment they stepped onto the staircase. They were directly bounced back more than 10 meters and fell to the ground. Seeing this, the others stopped and walked up, asking, "What's wrong?" "It's like an elastic wall. We can't go up at all." Dai Mubai spread his hands. Lin Feng walked over and smiled. "Don't use brute force, just walk up slowly." With that, Lin Feng came to the side of the staircase and walked up 10 steps with a relaxed expression. Needless to say, the pressure of Neptune's light was still very strong. The time Lin Feng took to walk up these 10 steps was about 0.01 seconds, slower than the time it took to walk up a normal staircase. Don't think that 0.01 seconds was very little. In a battle between experts, this was a slight flaw. Therefore, Lin Feng felt that Neptune's light was not bad. When the others saw this, they all walked over happily and prepared to start climbing the stairs. So that's how it works. Watch me climb all 108 steps in one go. Ma Hongjun quickly rushed to the side of the staircase again. As soon as he finished speaking, he quickly stepped onto the staircase. In the beginning, his movements were extremely fast. He went up 3 steps in one go, but it became more and more difficult. When he reached the 8th step, his entire face was red, and he directly fell to the ground in exhaustion. Chapter 482. Ma Hongjun's movements were too fast, and the pressure he faced increased exponentially. In a situation where he didn't activate his martial soul or soul power, it was already very good for him to be able to reach the 8th step in one go. The others were about the same, reaching around the 10th step. Those who climbed less, such as Ning Rongrong, only reached 6 steps. Those who climbed more, such as Tang San, reached the 20th step in one go. Xiao Wu also reached the 19th step, only 1 step behind Tang San. At this moment, everyone had a tacit understanding. They didn't use their soul power or martial souls, and only relied on their physical strength. At this moment, everyone stopped and panted. When they were ready to use their martial souls, Lin Feng had already reached the 50th step. Feng Ge, Eternal God. Awesome. Oscar shouted. Feng Ge is too strong. I can't go on after reaching the 20th step. It's too exhausting. Tang San sighed. Zhu Zhuqing, on the other hand, was more observant. She was on the 17th floor. At this time, she said, it seems that every 10 floors, the pressure we are under will suddenly increase a lot. Brother Feng rushed to the 50th floor all of a sudden. The pressure he is under is probably several times higher than the total pressure we are under. That's right, I feel the same way. The pressure on these steps increases in levels. You can stop at steps that are 10 times higher. Tang San said. Above, Lin Feng also explained when he heard this, the pressure on these steps will slowly squeeze out your potential. Later, use all your strength to climb up. When you reach your limit, then come down. This will make your soul power cultivation speed faster. Although Lin Feng said it very simply, everyone understood the effect of the sea god's light. It was specially used to stimulate one's potential. Following that, Lin Feng said, you can take it step by step. First, use your own physical strength to climb up. Then, use your martial soul to attach to your body. Then, use your soul power to support yourself. Finally, use your soul skills and so on. This way, you can release your strength bit by bit and maximize your potential. That's right. Tang San also nodded and said, Feng Ji's method can squeeze out every bit of our potential to the limit. It will only be good for increasing our strength. Just now, everyone had rushed up in one breath. This was actually not a good way to squeeze out their potential. After all, climbing so many steps in an instant was too much of a burden on the body. Now that they heard Lin Feng's suggestion, they all changed their strategy. First, they recuperated, then walked up the stairs step by step. Charge, charge, charge. I'm going to rush up to the 50th floor today. Ma Hongjun roared. His original goal was to reach the 108th level, but now that he knew how terrifying the light of the sea god was, he was able to instantly cut his target in half. Reaching the 50th level today was already quite good. Fatty, you're so weak. My goal is always the 51st floor. Oscar mocked. Then I'll go to the 52nd floor. Ma Hongjun was not to be outdone. Forget it. You want to go to the 52nd floor? If you can climb to the 52nd floor, I'll definitely be able to climb to the 53rd floor today. Although Oscar's physical fitness was not as good as Ma Hongjun's, he had the support of the sausage. His endurance was definitely better than Ma Hongjun's, which was why he had the confidence to say these words. Then I'll go to the 54th floor. I'll go to the 55th floor. The two of them bickered as they slowly walked up together. As for the others, they did not have the time to bicker. At this time, they were all walking up step by step. Because they were not climbing up many steps in a row, the pressure on everyone was not too great. Instead, they were walking steadily. Because Lin Feng had given Xue Qinghe the golden light protection, he was also walking up the stairs. Moreover, the number of steps he had taken was not much less than Tang San's, and he was following closely behind him. After all, Xue Qinghe's martial soul was angel. That was a martial soul that could be ranked in the top 3 in the entire continent. It was extremely powerful. Very quickly, an hour had passed. The group's physical strength was almost exhausted. Often, it would take them 1 or 2 minutes to take a step up. Although it was difficult, until now, no one had used their soul power or martial soul. They were purely relying on their physical fitness. And the current ranking was Lin Feng. He was in first place at the 157th floor. Moreover, he was still walking up step by step. Although his speed was much slower than before, he was still unwavering. The second place was Tang San. He was now at the 49th floor, which was almost the limit of his physical fitness. The third place was Xue Qinghe. He was now at the 43rd floor, which was also the limit of his physical fitness. The fourth place was Xiao Wu. She was now at the 41st floor. The fifth place was not Dai Mu Bai, but Zhu Zhuqing. He was at the 38th floor. The sixth place was Dai Mu Bai. He was also at the 38th floor. However, he was slower than Zhu Zhuqing. Therefore, his ranking was also lower. The seventh place was Ma Hongjun. He was at the 35th floor. The eighth place was Ning Rongrong. She was at the 30th floor. The ninth place was Oscar. He had also reached the 30th floor. However, he was slightly slower than Ning Rongrong. Therefore, he was in the last place. And because he was in the last place, Ma Hongjun had been mocking him along the way. Oscar had also been fighting back. When he used his soul power and soul skills later, he would instantly surpass him. At this moment, Lin Feng, who was at the top, turned around and said with a relaxed expression, "All right, you guys are almost at your limits now. Take a good rest and recover your physical strength. After that, you can choose to use your martial soul's power." The place they were at now was very stressful. However, at the same time, it was not enough to crush them. It was just right. Under such circumstances, meditating to recover their physical strength was also beneficial to their soul power. After hearing Lin Feng's words, everyone sat down cross-legged and began to meditate. As for Lin Feng, he naturally didn't need a rest. Right now, he was still very physically strong. However, after reaching the 100th floor, the pressure here was very terrifying. Lin Feng found it very difficult to continue. After all, Lin Feng was strong. Most importantly, he was strong in his soul power and soul skills. Now that he didn't use them, his strength would be greatly reduced. Even so, his physique was still very strong. After all, he had 2,000,000-year soul rings and 100,000-year soul bone. With his current physique, he could probably kill Douluo, who was a rank 95 titled soul master. Under such circumstances, Lin Feng felt that he could reach the 300th floor without using soul power or soul skills. However, this thought quickly disappeared from his mind. This was because when he stepped onto the 201st step, his expression changed. On this floor, the pressure would increase by a lot every 10 steps. After every 100 steps, the increase would be even more terrifying. Previously, when he stepped on the 101st floor, the pressure wasn't very strong. Although it increased by a lot, Lin Feng didn't feel much. However, now that he had stepped onto the 200th floor, the pressure was so great that he couldn't lift his feet. Although it wasn't that he couldn't move at all, Lin Feng knew that he wouldn't be able to move at all after another 20 steps. Even now, it was extremely difficult for him to take a step forward. The sea god was still quite strong. The light of the sea god was definitely maintained by true god power. Otherwise, the pressure wouldn't be so strong. Half an hour later, Lin Feng walked another 20 steps and reached the 220th floor. At this point, his physical strength was almost depleted. It was time to sit down and recover. At this moment, Lin Feng didn't use his life energy to recover. That would be better, but it was just like what he said to Tang San and the rest. Although this kind of rapid recovery was very useful in a short period of time, it was a big drawback in the long run. This was because it didn't train one's abilities very well. Lin Feng walked the light of the sea god mainly to train himself and polish his abilities. Therefore, he had to treat it wholeheartedly and not take shortcuts. Just as Lin Feng was meditating and resting, the group below had almost recovered and started the second round of climbing. It had to be said that cultivating under this kind of pressure would increase one's abilities very quickly. Xiao Wu was originally weak because of the rapid increase in her abilities, which was quickly smoothed out. Now that she had released her martial soul, she actually broke through after climbing a dozen steps. Haha, I've broken through. I'm at level 74 now. Third brother isn't as strong as me. Xiao Wu shouted happily. Using the momentum of her breakthrough, she quickly climbed up and surpassed Xue Qinghe and Tang San in an instant, reaching second place. Seeing this, the others didn't want to be outdone. They gritted their teeth and started climbing. This was especially true for Oscar. He seemed to have been provoked by Ma Hongjuan's mockery. Now that he had eaten all kinds of sausages, he overtook Ma Hongjun in a short 5 minutes. At this moment, everyone was controlling the soul power in their bodies to resist the pressure. Under this kind of situation, where the pressure was shared by the whole body, the group climbed the tower very quickly. This was especially true for Tang San. After he went all out, he even used the 8 spider spears on his back. Not only that, but as the number of stairs increased, he also used his blue-silver domain, killer god domain, and so on. At this moment, Tang San's aura was very terrifying. It felt like he was even stronger than Seahorse Douluo. Under such circumstances, Tang San actually rushed to the 100th step in an extremely short period of time. After reaching this point, the pressure on him increased sharply, and his footsteps gradually slowed down. Below, the group of people also used their own abilities, soul power, and soul skills to support themselves as they quickly advanced. However, compared to Tang San, they were still much weaker, not to mention Lin Feng, who had already left them far behind. As for Xue Qinghe, because he had to hide his angel martial soul, he couldn't fully unleash his strength. Now he was only at the 80th step. After about 10 minutes, everyone's sprint time was over, and they were all climbing up at a tortoise-like speed. At this moment, Lin Feng had more or less recovered. He stood up and looked down. Tang San had already reached the 130th step. Other than him, Xue Qinghe and Xiao Wu had reached the 100th step and above. As for the others, they were all below the 100th step and around the 90th step. The last one was Ning Rongrong, who had only reached the 85th step. Compared to Lin Feng, these steps could only be said to be weak to the point of exploding. However, this was already ridiculously strong, because in the original work, the strongest person, Tang San, had only reached the 50th floor in his first attempt. As for the others, they were around the 20th to 30th step. Now, each of them had increased by 2 or 3 times. 2 or 3 times the number of steps was equivalent to more than 10 times the pressure. Especially those 3 who were taking the black rank exam. They were about to pass the exam with another 20 steps. There was only one reason why everyone had such a strong performance, and that was that their current strength was even stronger than in the original work. One had to know that in the original work, Tang San and the others came to the Sea Gods Island 7 or 8 years later. Now, everyone was stronger than they were 8 years later. It can only be said that Lin Feng's influence on them was too great, especially the method of soul power control. This method was the main reason. If it wasn't for the free use of soul power, they wouldn't have been able to climb so many steps. But at the moment, they were probably at their limit. They were gradually exhausted. Some left the light of the sea god to take a rest, while others rested on the steps to train themselves. But at the same time, they looked up and saw Lin Feng climbing up more than 200 steps with ease. Their faces were full of shock. The pressure will increase several times with every 100 steps. Fengge is at the 200th step. The pressure is unimaginable. Yes, the gap between us and Fengge is too big. I think that the average titled battle pet warrior Douluo is no match for Fengge. Do you think Fengge can pass the test today? I think it's possible. He's almost at the 300th step. It won't be long before he reaches the 333rd step. The pressure above the 300th step will be even greater. The last 33 steps will be extremely difficult. I think it will be difficult. Everyone was talking about Lin Feng, watching him climb up step by step. If Lin Feng could hear what they were saying, he would probably say no problem. Right now, he was only using his own soul power. He didn't use any of his soul skills or martial soul. Even so, he didn't feel much pressure when he reached the 280th step. He believed that he would have to use his martial soul to enhance his strength after reaching the 300th step. He would have to use his soul skills if he wanted to go any higher. After all, the pressure was increasing too fast. Right then, Tang Sin shouted from the top of the steps, "You'd better meditate on the steps. It's good for your strength growth." "Ah, I shouldn't have come down. It's too hard to go up now. I'm exhausted anyway." Ma Hongjun sat on the ground, paralyzed. He didn't want to move. They had just challenged their limits. Not only were they exhausted, but their soul power was also exhausted. They didn't have the strength to go up anymore. They had to rest and meditate where they were. Tang Sin didn't say anything else. He shouted again, "If you can't go up, then rest here. Recover as soon as possible." Chapter 483. Below him, everyone was meditating to recover their strength. Above him, Lin Feng had already reached the 300th step. At this point, the pressure here was very terrifying. Lin Feng would be forced to take a few steps back if he gave in. "I'm almost there." It was already very good that he could reach the 300th step with only his soul power. After he finished speaking, his third soul ring suddenly lit up. Armored demonic bear transformation. At this moment, Lin Feng unleashed his third soul skill. His body shone with a blinding white light, and his entire body became a little thicker. His aura also increased greatly. His legs, which were originally heavy, took a step forward with the support of this new strength. Then, he took another step and another. However, after reaching the 300th step, the pressure on each step increased significantly. After reaching the 5th step, Lin Feng couldn't hold on anymore. At this moment, his 5th and 6th soul rings lit up at the same time. Netherworld body, lightning power. With the support of these two powers, Lin Feng's body became illusory. At the same time, lightning flashed, and his body became very dazzling. The light of the sea god also exuded a blue light. As the two of them shone together, they seemed very harmonious. Of course, these lights weren't important. The main thing was that there was a new strength in Lin Feng's body. Furthermore, this strength was very strong. On these 300 steps, Lin Feng actually felt a little relaxed. However, this relaxed feeling only lasted for 6 steps. When Lin Feng reached the 311th step, he couldn't lift his feet anymore. It was mainly because climbing from the 310th step to the 311th step was too draining. Lin Feng actually felt a sense of fatigue that he hadn't felt in a long time. Carefree, this is too carefree. This pressure was even more exciting than fighting Thousand Hours Lu and BB Dong. However, it wasn't a good feeling. Lin Feng didn't hesitate and immediately activated his martial soul true body. At this moment, the effects of Lin Feng's various soul skills had more than doubled. His soul power had also become incomparably strong. What was even more terrifying was that the surrounding sea god's light was beginning to twist and warp under the pressure of this power, as if it were about to crack open. God Realm, within the Sea God Palace. Poseidon was in a very good mood. He had received 2 very talented disciples, especially the second one, whose talent was simply heaven-defying. He might be able to break through the 9 trials of the sea god very soon and inherit the deity position. By then, he would be able to enjoy his retirement. However, not long after this happy thought appeared in his mind, his expression changed. What's wrong? Why did he feel like the power of the sea god's light was dissipating? More than half of it had been consumed. Most importantly, the sea god's energy on the sea god's island was rapidly decreasing, and he didn't know the reason behind it. With that thought in mind, he immediately used the sea god statue and the holy pillar to observe the situation on the sea god's island. He wouldn't have known if he hadn't seen it, but the moment he did, he was shocked. He saw that Lin Feng was already on the 323rd step of the sea god's light, and he was still going up. It hadn't been long since he gave out the 9 trials of the sea god, and it had only been 1 or 2 seconds. How was he about to pass the first trial? Furthermore, this guy's strength was terrifying. The energy of the sea god's light was rapidly being consumed. One had to know that the sea god's energy on the sea god's island came from the people and soul masters on the Douluo continent who believed in the sea god. Normally, this energy was extremely strong, and there would be a lot of it produced every day. Almost half of it would be absorbed by the sea god. The remaining half would be used to maintain the various formations on the sea god's island, as well as the power of the domain. Less than half of it would be used on the island within the island. On one hand, it would become the sea god's light, and on the other hand, it would return to the sea. This was the main reason why the soul beasts near the sea god's island could cultivate so quickly. Normally, the energy contained within the sea god's light was extremely strong. After so many years of accumulation, the sea god's light could even kill a rank 99 titled soul master like the Douluo continent. If Poseidon wanted to borrow the sea god's energy, he would have to draw from the sea god's light. This energy was extremely strong, and if Poseidon was allowed to fully unleash it, it would probably be comparable to a rank 100 god. From this, one could see how strong the sea god's light was. But now more than half of it was being used up by Lin Feng. The main reason was the design of the stairs. When it was first designed, it was to exert pressure on soul masters and squeeze out their potential. No matter what rank or strength a soul master was, the sea god's light would give them the most suitable pressure. Lin Feng was too strong, and the pressure needed to be suitable for him. Naturally, a large amount of energy was needed. This wasn't very obvious when he was at the bottom, because the energy consumption wasn't that high. But now, Lin Feng was already at the 300th floor, and he was using up a lot of energy. Especially now that he had to walk a few steps when he went up the stairs, the pressure had to increase quickly. Under such circumstances, Lin Feng was rapidly depleting the energy of the sea god's light. Even the energy of the sea god's light's domain was being slowly absorbed by the sea god's light. Lin Feng didn't know any of this. He knew that the pressure everyone faced was different. After all, with the pressure he was facing now, even a rank 100 god wouldn't be able to withstand it easily. Under such circumstances, even if Tang San were to unleash his full strength, he would be crushed to pieces in an instant. Therefore, Lin Feng quickly understood the rules of the stairs. But he didn't expect the sea god's light's power to be limited. If there were no accidents, the sea god's light would disappear when Lin Feng reached the 330th floor. Of course, Poseidon wouldn't allow the sea god's light to disappear. When he discovered this, he immediately solved the problem. The solution was simple. He just had to channel his divine power into the sea god's light. After all, Lin Feng was his most favored successor. Now that he was undergoing a test, Poseidon had to endure it no matter how much energy he had to consume. Although he had suffered some losses in transferring divine power, it was nothing compared to the loss of his successor. This divine power was Poseidon's own divine power. Even a little bit was enough to keep the sea god's island running for 100 years. This showed how powerful the divine power was. With the support of the divine power, all the problems were solved. Not only did the sea god's light stabilize, but the pressure on the stairs also increased. While Poseidon was channeling his divine power, Lin Feng felt that the pressure on his body was increasing. He didn't know if it was an illusion or something, but he felt that the pressure on his body was increasing. He didn't pay much attention to it. He thought it was normal. However, when he reached the 330th step, he realized that he couldn't move anymore. Lin Feng had calculated the gravity on the stairs. Logically speaking, with Lin Feng's current strength, he should be able to pass the first test. But now, after reaching the 330th step, he couldn't move anymore. The pressure was too great. He couldn't even lift his feet. At this time, outside the stairs, after a short rest, a group of people slowly opened their eyes. They were ready to charge up the stairs again. However, when they looked up, they were all stunned. F***CK. Is that Fengge? I feel like he's going to pass the first test. How many floors is that? It's at least 300 floors. Brother Feng, are we almost there? He should be breaking through. He's at least above 320. Ning Rongrong, Oscar, and the others quickly laughed. The stairs of more than 300 steps were extremely high. In the eyes of the people at the bottom, Lin Feng was smaller than an ant. so they couldn't tell how many steps he had reached. Tang Sin took a look and said, Feng Ge has reached the 330th step. I guess he'll pass the first test soon. We still have a long way to go. Let's work harder. Although there weren't many steps to climb in the 6th black level examination, one could pass the 108th step. However, the higher the steps, the more difficult it was. Tang Sin even estimated that Ma Hongjun, Oscar, and the others would be stuck at the 100th step for a long time. After all, the gap between every 100th step was too great. Every time they climbed a step, they had to break through their own limits and spend a lot of time. Feng Ge is mighty and domineering. Now that he has passed the first test, we can see what the rewards of the Sea God examination are. While everyone was talking in the forest not far from them, Sai was looking at Lin Feng in shock as he slowly climbed up. She had also walked through the light of the Sea God, but at that time, she was very strong and talented. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been able to pass the top test. However, even she only reached the 50th or 60th step when she climbed the light of the Sea God for the first time. But now, all 9 of them had surpassed her, especially the first place. How long had it been? It hadn't even been 2 hours, but he had already reached the 300th step. It was terrifying. If it weren't for the Sea God's rule that no one was allowed to disturb the examination, Sai would have rushed up to Lin Feng and asked him how he did it. While everyone was shocked by Lin Feng's strength, he frowned slightly. He struggled to lift his foot and pressed forward. Unexpectedly, there was a great repulsive force on the stairs in front of him. He couldn't step down no matter how hard he tried. Get down, along with a low shout. Lin Feng's left leg, where the wind dragon left leg bone was, released a dazzling green light. At this moment, Lin Feng released the soul skill on his soul bone. At the same time, his soul power spread throughout his body. He turned into a breeze. Boom! As he stomped down, a strong gust of wind rose. The light of the Sea God couldn't withstand this strong gust of wind. A huge hole was blown into it. Although he quickly recovered, the power that Lin Feng unleashed was still extremely frightening. After he stomped down, he didn't hesitate. He lifted his other foot and stomped down on the 332nd step. At this moment, Lin Feng's skull exerted force. His eyes shone brightly. He activated his spatial imprisonment. Everything around him stopped. Even the light of the Sea God was stopped for a moment. Although this space was soon crushed by the tide-like pressure, Lin Feng still managed to grab hold of the opportunity. He successfully stomped his second foot. At this point, Lin Feng was only left with the 333rd step. As long as he stood on it, he would pass the first test. Turning around to look at everyone, Lin Feng realized that they were all looking at him. Some were outside the stairs, while others were inside. They were all looking at him with anticipation and admiration. Without looking further, Lin Feng quickly came back to his senses. Without hesitation, he mustered all the strength in his body and took this step. As soon as he lifted his foot, Lin Feng's first soul skill, Life Bloom, was successfully activated. The pressure on his body cooled down slightly. While his foot was rising, Lin Feng's body trembled, and he quietly activated his killing god domain. The surrounding space seemed to be dyed blood red. With the support of these various abilities, coupled with the release of the domain, the surrounding space seemed to have been dyed red. Finally, Lin Feng stepped on the last step. Even though Lin Feng was extremely powerful, he still felt that it was very strenuous for him to climb the last 33 steps. Now that he finally stepped on it, his heart instantly relaxed. He slumped down on the steps with a smile on his face. First test of the top 9 tests. Passing through twice the light of the Sea God passed. Reward. Soul power increased by 3 levels. In an instant, the surrounding light of the Sea God turned into pure soul power and merged into Lin Feng's body. He soon felt that his strength was quietly increasing. In just a few seconds, he reached rank 86. Lin Feng could actually block that power just now, but he didn't do so. This was because what Lin Feng needed now was to increase his strength. If he wanted to obtain a God-bestowed soul ring, he had to reach rank 91st. Just as Lin Feng completed the first test, everyone below cheered. Fengge is awesome. See, I knew it. Fengge might be able to pass the first test today. Fengge has already broken through. We can't fall behind. Although Fengge gave us 3 months, we can't really complete it in 3 months. We have to work harder and bring the time forward. That's right. We have to close the gap between us and Fengge. While everyone was talking, Poseidon, who was not far away, was shocked. What kind of joke was this? This Lin Feng actually completed the first test in a day. If this first test was the first test of the yellow or white level, Poseidon might have believed it. However, this was the first test of the Sea God's 9 tests. It could be said to be the most difficult test of all. However, Lin Feng had already completed it. It had only been a day. This was too shocking. Poseidon wanted to go out and say something to Lin Feng. However, we didn't seem to have any intention of coming down, so she didn't go out. Chapter 484. On the 333rd step of the light of the sea god, Lin Feng sat cross-legged, experiencing the transformation and pressure of the light of the sea god on his body. Was this the power of the sea god? It felt completely different from the soul power on his million-year soul ring. Not only was it different from his, but it was also very different from Bibi Dong and Chindeoliu's. Because of his curiosity about divine power, Lin Feng quickly began to study it. After all, this was the first time he had truly come into contact with divine power, and he wanted to deconstruct the principles behind it. Just like soul power, if Lin Feng could thoroughly study divine power, his strength would be incomparably powerful when he became a god. Just like that, Lin Feng sat cross-legged on the high steps with his eyes closed. Below, Tang San and the others were greatly encouraged when they saw this. Did you see that? Not only did Fengge reach the 333rd step, but he also sat there leisurely and entered a cultivation state. He is so powerful. We need to chase after him with all our might. To them, every step forward was suppressing their potential and challenging their limits. Therefore, every step they went up was extremely stressful on their bodies. It was impossible for them to cultivate under this kind of pressure. Even Tang San was unable to cultivate at the highest level that he could currently reach. He needed to regress by more than 10 steps before he could cultivate again. At this moment, Lin Feng was easily cultivating at the highest level of the assessment, and this was something that everyone was extremely envious of. Come on, I must become as strong as Fengge. Ma Hongjun was greatly encouraged. Without any nonsense, he continued to rush up the stairs and began a climb. I won't be left behind either. Xiao Wu also cheered and followed. Zhu Zhuqing didn't say anything. He just silently followed behind Xiao Wu and spoke with his actions. The others followed suit one after another. They were so stimulated by Lin Feng that they only wanted to complete the mission as soon as possible. Even Xue Qinghe was extremely excited at this moment. Was this a soul master trained by the Marvel family? It was amazing that he could complete such a difficult test so easily. At this moment, Xue Qinghe yearned for the Marvel family even more. This was something that Lin Feng did not know. At this moment, he was analyzing the divine power in his body, trying to understand its principles. However, the time that the god power stayed in his body was too short, and it quickly turned into his strength. In the end, an hour passed, but he didn't feel anything. However, it wasn't like he didn't gain anything. At the very least, he learned what true divine power looked like. In the future, he would be able to recognize it easily. With that thought in mind, he didn't linger on the stairs for long. Instead, he strode down the stairs. When he reached the 200th floor, he gradually slowed down because he would soon run into Tang San and the others. At this moment, they were moving forward with their heads down. With every step, they had to rest for a few minutes or even a quarter of an hour. Under such circumstances, their potential was rapidly being squeezed out. Lin Feng didn't make much noise when he came down, and his speed was extremely fast. Before anyone could react, he had already reached Tang San's side. The 167th floor. This was Tang San's current position. Now that the sky was about to darken, it was already very good to be able to reach this floor in half a day. Lin Feng glanced at his status. He estimated that he could climb another 3 floors today and reached the 170th floor. Lin Feng didn't call him. That would distract him. Maybe he would lose his breath and be blown away by the pressure. Just like that, after glancing at him, Lin Feng continued to walk down. The second person was Xiao Wu. She was currently at the 139th floor. She estimated that she would only be able to reach the 140th floor today. The third person was Xueqinghe. He was currently at the 125th floor and was walking up with a determined expression. At this moment, Xueqinghe had already unleashed his full strength. His angel martial soul was attached to his body. He wasn't worried about being discovered by others because of the golden light that Lin Feng had covered his body. His martial soul was perfectly covered by the golden light. Unless he was on the 5th floor with others, it would be very difficult to distinguish him. However, even if Xueqinghe unleashed his full strength, there was still a huge gap between him and Xiao Wu. His soul power rank was about the same as Xiao Wu's. However, the time he spent learning soul power control was right there. Because of his advantage in strength, he could barely be on par with her in some aspects. However, in terms of details, there was still a huge gap between him and the others. It was also because of this that the gap between Xueqinghe and Xiao Wu was so huge. The fourth person was Zhu Zhuqing. She had actually reached the 103rd floor. It seemed like she could still go up 1 or 2 more floors. When Lin Feng passed by her, the latter seemed to have sensed it and turned her head to look at him. It was Feng Ge. Feng Ge actually came down. Zhu Zhuqing was shocked and pleasantly surprised at the same time. She thought that Lin Feng had stopped to see her. Her heart instantly surged with excitement. The thread that was originally taut also loosened. The soul power in her body was also somewhat unstable. In an instant, a tide-like pressure attacked her, causing her to involuntarily fly out. Not good. Zhu Zhuqing's expression changed. She wanted to stabilize her body. However, the pressure was too great. She wanted to, but she was powerless. At this moment, Lin Feng quietly appeared beside Zhu Zhuqing. He held her back with one hand, and their soul power instantly became one. In an instant, Zhu Zhuqing felt the pressure on her body disappear. Her feet seemed to have taken root as she stood on the stairs. Behind her, the big hand gave Zhu Zhuqing an incomparably strong sense of security. Pay attention. Don't be distracted. At the same time, Lin Feng's magnetic voice sounded in her ear. Okay. Zhu Zhuqing responded with a mosquito-like voice. At this moment, Lin Feng was leaning against her. Her body was still covered in sweat. At this moment, the two of them were almost tightly pressed against each other. It was Zhu Zhuqing's first time being in contact with Lin Feng. Therefore, she felt very shy at this moment, and her heart was beating fast. Looking at her flushed face, Lin Feng felt that she was very cute. He directly kissed her on the face. In an instant, Zhu Zhuqing's face became even redder. Lin Feng smiled and said, "It's not suitable for you to continue climbing the stairs now. Go down and rest first." After speaking, he didn't wait for Zhu Zhuqing to speak. He directly carried Zhu Zhuqing and walked down. At this moment, the two of them also saw that the 5th place was Dai Mubai. At this moment, he had reached the 100th floor. However, he looked exhausted. It was estimated that he wouldn't be able to set foot on the next floor today. Without stopping, Lin Feng directly carried Zhu Zhuqing down. The 6th place wasn't Mahong Jun or Oscar. It was actually Ning Rongrong. She walked to the 95th floor and was currently sitting on the ground to rest. As if she sensed something, when Lin Feng passed by her with Zhu Zhuqing, she immediately looked over. After that, she didn't think much and immediately followed them. Originally, she wanted to set foot on the 96th floor today. However, this matter had evidently stimulated her, and she immediately chased after them. The 7th place was Mahong Jun. He was on the 93rd floor. After seeing the few of them walk down, he was too lazy to continue climbing. He followed them down. The last place was Oscar. He was only on the 88th floor. Although he had said that he could easily surpass Mahong Jun, he was still too weak. On one hand, his soul power was the weakest. On the other hand, he practiced his soul power control. Because he had to research soul tools, Oscar spent the least amount of time on cultivation out of everyone present. Fortunately, he had a method to control his soul power, which allowed him to maintain a small portion of his cultivation efficiency. Otherwise, it would be difficult for him to even reach rank 60. Ma Hongjuan's cultivation time was only slightly more than Oscar's. If not for the fact that he had a top-ranked beast martial soul, he would probably only be able to hang around on the 90th floor. Lin Feng didn't pay much attention to these things. At this moment, he had already brought Zhu Zhuqing to the staircase. When he came out, the system's notification stunned him. Ding! After a difficult pressure test, the host has successfully broken through to the 333rd floor of the Sea God's Light. His soul power has become more condensed. Experience plus 528624815. More than 500 million experience points came a little unexpectedly. Lin Feng didn't think of this at all. This was because his physique had been improving ever since he became stronger. In this way, it was very difficult for him to gain experience points through physical training. He didn't expect this Sea God's Light to give him so much experience points. It was too satisfying. This was more than 500 million experience points. It was equivalent to fighting with Bibi Dong, Thousand Dao Lu, and the elders of the Martial Spirit Hall. It was too satisfying. Moreover, this Sea God's Light had a total of more than 1,000 steps. If he walked all of them, he would probably earn tens of billions of experience points. In this way, he would be able to obtain his third million-year soul ring. And this was only Lin Feng's rough estimate. Perhaps the experience points he would earn in the end would be enough for him to upgrade 2 million-year soul rings. Thinking of this, his face immediately bloomed with a smile. There are also the God-bestowed soul rings, Seahorse de Poseidon, and so on. When the time came, Lin Feng would be able to earn a lot of experience points from his Sea God's Island. Just as he was thinking about this, Oscar, Ning Rongrong, and the others followed him down. Fengge, you passed the first test. You're amazing. Ning Rongrong ignored the fatigue on her body and forced herself to rush in front of Lin Feng. Being called out, Lin Feng finally came back to his senses. And Zhu Zhuqing, because of shyness, immediately broke free from Lin Feng's arm. At this moment, before Lin Feng could say anything, Ning Rongrong seemed to be unable to run fast enough and accidentally fell, falling directly towards Lin Feng. Subconsciously, Lin Feng reached out to support her. He said with concern, "You're already exhausted. Why are you still running so fast? Sit down and rest." With that, Lin Feng helped Ning Rongrong to sit on the ground. "I'm fine. Fengge, you climbed to the 333rd step and you're not tired." "I'm nothing," Ning Rongrong said stubbornly. She ran over just now mainly because she was a little jealous. After all, Lin Feng took Zhu Zhuqing down and ignored her. But at this moment, when she heard his words of concern, the jealousy in her heart instantly dissipated. At this moment, Ma Hongjun also ran over and immediately asked, "Fengge, what reward did you get after passing the first test?" He had always been thinking about the reward after the test, so he was very curious. "Soul Power Rank. I took the Sea God's 9 tests. The difficulty is high, but the reward is also higher. I was rewarded with 3 ranks of soul power. If you took the black rank test, you should only get 1 rank." At first, when he heard that he had 3 ranks of soul power, Ma Hongjuan's face was filled with joy. But after hearing that it was only 1 rank, his face instantly collapsed. He wailed, "The 6 black rank test is so weak. I only got 1 rank. I also want to take the Sea God's 9 tests." Behind him, Oscar also walked up at this time and mocked disdainfully, "You, fatty, why don't you see how far you are from Fengge? You probably won't be able to reach those 300 steps in your lifetime. If you can't pass in year, you can just wait for death." Although Oscar's words were crude, it was true. If Ma Hongjun was given the Sea God's 9 tests, he could only wait for death. That's true. Ma Hongjun did not refute, but said self-consciously, "Then I'd better take the 6th black rank test. My life is more important." With Oscar and Ma Hongjuan's interruption, the atmosphere became much more normal. Otherwise, Lin Feng would feel a little awkward being sandwiched between Zhu Zhuqing and Ning Rongrong. Okay, everyone take a rest and recover. It's dark now. Get ready to rest for the night. Everyone was tired after a day, so they did not continue to squeeze themselves at night. After all, potential was suitable for a long time. Otherwise, if they squeezed too much at one time, it would be easy to squeeze them dry. Rest, rest, I'm exhausted. Ma Hongjun directly collapsed on the ground and immediately began to recover. The others were also very tired. Seeing this, they all sat on the ground and crossed their legs to meditate. Lin Feng was no exception. He did not look tired on the surface, but in fact, he had consumed a lot of energy. Now that he was meditating, his soul power, physical strength, and so on were quickly recovering. Just like this, not long after, about an hour later, when the sky was completely dark, Tang San, Xiao Wu, and the others came down the stairs. They were not very tired because they had meditated to recover a little before coming down. At this time, after coming down, the group of people chatted and ate dry food at the same time. Seahorse City was still very far away from here. During this time, they were obviously going to stay here. Feng Gu, is it difficult to pass the 200th and 300 floors? Tang Sin asked. These were the two questions he was most concerned about, because he would also need to go there in the future. If you ask me, it's definitely not difficult, but it's still a little difficult for you. Lin Feng smiled and said, however, the intensity of this kind of pressure varies according to each person's situation. You should have no problem. Varies according to the situation? This Neptune's light is too advanced. Xiao Wu exclaimed. The others were also surprised. Obviously, they did not notice this and thought that the pressure was the same. Chapter 485. Feng Gu, are you saying that the pressure is automatically adjusted? Oscar asked. That's right. Lin Feng nodded. It's really too powerful. I'm guessing that this island within an island is an extraordinarily large soul tool. If I can understand its principles, and if I have enough materials, I might be able to create one. Oscar was very excited as he spoke. He was taking things for granted, but strictly speaking, he wasn't wrong. After all, a soul tool was a tool that transferred energy from the human body to the tool. The Sea God's Island's formation was built by the sea god Poseidon. The materials and principles used were unknown. However, Lin Feng guessed that the sea god had used materials from the god realm because of his ability to communicate with divine power. Douluo's continent didn't have these materials, so Oscar was delusional if he wanted to replicate the sea god's island. Lin Feng said, don't think about that. You can only think of one thing now, and that is to complete the first test in 3 months. Even though everyone except Tang San was not far from passing the test, in reality, there was still a long way to go. This was because the closer they got to the end, the greater the pressure on the steps. There were even cases where they couldn't climb a single step in a day. Therefore, this group of people had to work hard. All right, Feng Gu, we will definitely succeed. Everyone nodded. Lin Feng continued. All right, you guys can rest now. I'll take a walk around the sea god's island. I'll come back to find you in a few days. After he finished speaking, he didn't stay any longer and left directly. Lin Feng wasn't telling the truth when he said that he was going to take a walk around the sea god's island. It was just an excuse. His main purpose for leaving this time was to find the deep-sea devil whale king. As long as he killed that whale, he would be able to obtain a soul ring and a soul bone. Furthermore, this fellow's soul ring was very old. He only needed a little more than 1 billion experience points to break through to the million-year level. He might even be able to obtain his 3rd million-year soul ring in a few days. As he thought of this, Lin Feng quickly rushed into the forest. When no one saw him, he teleported and arrived at the edge of the sea god's island. After another teleportation, Lin Feng arrived in the sky. After that, he spread his lightning wings and flew forward. Not long after Lin Feng left, Poseidon, who had been observing everyone, followed him into the forest. Where is he? Poseidon was shocked when she saw that there was no one in front of her. She was sure that Lin Feng had entered the forest in front of her, but she didn't see anything. She clearly followed him immediately. Could it be that he just disappeared? Or was it a soul skill that was related to teleportation? Poseidon immediately spread out her spiritual power, trying to find Lin Feng's location. In her opinion, Lin Feng's strength should be around rank 80. Soul Douluo's teleportation should still be on the sea god's island. Poseidon's divine sense was strengthened by the power of the sea god. She could just barely scan the entire sea god's island. But after half a minute, she couldn't find Lin Feng. How is this possible? Where is he? Poseidon was puzzled, but she couldn't find anything. In the end, she could only give up. It seemed that Lin Feng had a lot of secrets. Even she couldn't find out where he was. Hopefully, this would bring benefits to the sea god's island. Now that the situation on the continent of Douluo had changed, the sea god's island was forced to open to the outside world. Otherwise, with their current strength, the sea god's island would have to submit after the continent was unified. Therefore, this group of people was very important to the sea god's island. If they all passed the test, the sea god's island's strength would increase greatly. Moreover, these people were all from the continent. They were such geniuses. Perhaps they were related to the major factions. With this relationship, even if the continent was unified, she wouldn't have to worry too much. Poseidon didn't spend too much time looking for Lin Feng. Right now, it was more important to have a meeting to plan the future development of the sea god's island. On one hand, she wanted to talk about the situation of these people. On the other hand, she wanted to discuss whether the sea god's island should be open to the public. Demon Whale Ocean. Lin Feng was already in the sky. He looked at the surface of the ocean, searching for the location of the Demon Whale King. Although the sky was dark, it was nothing to Lin Feng. With the help of the moonlight, he could easily see everything. However, this ocean was too big. Lin Feng needed a lot of time to search. He estimated that it would take him an hour to search. The main thing was that he couldn't fly too high. Otherwise, there wouldn't be enough light, and he wouldn't be able to see the situation clearly. Moreover, there were clouds. Just like that, Lin Feng began his search in the sea. Although it would take him an hour to search the entire ocean, it didn't mean that Lin Feng could find the Demon Whale King in an hour. On the contrary, the probability of Lin Feng encountering the Demon Whale King was very low. If one wanted to calculate the exact probability, it was just a simple math problem. There were 24 hours in a day. Assuming that the deep-sea monster whale king spent 10 minutes a day on the surface of the sea, and Lin Feng spent half of his time patrolling, the probability of encountering the deep-sea monster whale king in a day was about 8%. This was assuming that the demon whale king was in the demon whale ocean. If it wasn't, the probability of Lin Feng encountering it would be 0. Moreover, this data was only Lin Feng's speculation. Maybe this guy only came up once a month and slept the rest of the time. There was also the problem of Lin Feng's patrolling time. If he spent half a day patrolling, it would be too boring. Lin Feng shouldn't be that diligent. So in the end, the probability of encountering the Demon Whale King was very low. It might not even be 1%. Lin Feng had already thought about it. He would first search for a few days. If he couldn't find it, then he wouldn't continue searching. When the time came, he would return to Neptune's light and continue to experience the pressure. In any case, this pressure would give him experience points. If he spent time on it, it wouldn't be a loss. When Tang San and the others passed the first test, Lin Feng would be able to participate in the second test with them. However, this depended on the time. If they passed the first test fast enough, then they could continue to participate in the second test. If it took a little longer, he could send the person to the Martial Soul Alliance first. After all, if they didn't go back for so long, it would be very troublesome if the Martial Spirit Alliance made a move. Thinking about it, Lin Feng began his painstaking search on the sea. In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed. Lin Feng returned to Neptune's island with a look of discomfort. In these 3 days, Lin Feng spent most of his time searching for the Demon Whale King. However, this guy really seemed to be sleeping at the bottom of the sea. After searching for so long, he still couldn't find it. Lin Feng even suspected that he had found the wrong place. Could it be that the whale wasn't here? Of course, although it was uncomfortable, Lin Feng didn't care too much. After all, he had already mentally prepared himself before he started searching. When he returned to Neptune's light, he went straight to Neptune's light. It was now 9 in the morning. When Lin Feng arrived at Neptune's Light, he saw several people struggling on the stairs. After a few glances and using his spiritual power to investigate, he knew everyone's current situation. The rankings were the same as 3 days ago, but there was a big change in the number of steps. First was Tang San. He had actually reached the 207th step, and his soul power had also broken through a rank, reaching rank 74. Next was Xiao Wu. She had reached the 182nd step, and her soul power had reached rank 76. She should have been rewarded after completing the test. Third was Xue Qinghe. He had reached the 151st step, and his soul power had also broken through to rank 76. Fourth was Zhu Zhuqing. He had broken through to rank 66 at the 121st step. Dai Mubai. Fifth was Dai Mubai. He had broken through to rank 68 at the 103rd step. Sixth was Ning Rongrong. She had broken through to rank 64 at the 101st step. Seventh was Ma Hongjun. His soul power had broken through to rank 64 at the 101st step. Last was Oscar. His soul power had broken through to rank 63 at the 98th step. Tang San and the rest were about to break through before, but now that they were pressured by this pressure, they broke through one after another. Lin Feng ignored everyone and went directly to the steps and started sprinting. That's right, he was sprinting wildly on the steps that were filled with pressure. The pressure increased exponentially, and this was the effect that Lin Feng wanted. As long as the pressure was great enough, he would gain more experience. At this moment, he ran directly to the 100th step by relying on his physical fitness. Following that, he didn't stop at all. With the support of his soul power, soul skills, and domain, he continued sprinting wildly. After only 3 seconds, he reached the 200th step. At this moment, Lin Feng was sweating all over, and his legs felt as heavy as lead. He had also used up more than half of his physical strength, and his entire body seemed to have lost all strength. And the truth was that this sprint had used up too much of his physical strength and soul power. Even with his current strength, the 200th step was enough to stop him. The main thing was that he suddenly sprinted so high, and the pressure was like the waves stacking up rapidly. At this moment, the pressure of the 200th step was extremely terrifying. Even a normal title battle pet warrior like Douluo would probably be crushed into pieces in an instant. Lin Feng panted heavily and directly sat down on the 200th step, meditating to recover his energy. Not long after, as if sensing that Lin Feng was no longer sprinting, the pressure suddenly decreased and suddenly became something that Lin Feng could easily bear. At the same time, in the God realm, in the sea god's palace, Poseidon withdrew his hand with a look of discomfort. Just now, in an instant, he felt that in Douluo's world, his divine power was being consumed at an extremely fast speed. He had just filled it with energy. How long had it been? How could it be consumed so quickly? Although he was puzzled, he immediately transferred his divine power over to save the situation. After the consumption of his divine power weakened, he then immersed himself in the sea god's island. Then, the corner of Poseidon's mouth twitched. This kid really has nothing better to do. How could he rush into the light of the sea god at such a fast speed? I almost broke it. This energy is also being consumed very quickly. Apart from the energy, Poseidon also noticed Lin Feng's physical fitness. This physical fitness was too heaven-defying. Even some of the weak gods in the god realm could not compare to this. Poseidon was very surprised. At the same time, he also felt that it was strange that such a strong person could be born in a place like Douluo's world. This did not make sense at all. Of course, although he was puzzled, Poseidon did not think too much about it. In his opinion, Lin Feng would definitely be able to obtain the qualifications of the sea god quickly. Once he completed the 9 tests of the sea god, Poseidon would know everything. Based on the difference in the flow of time on both sides, Poseidon estimated that he would be able to receive his successor in a few days. With such a happy mood, Poseidon sent a lot of divine power to the sea god's island. Then, he sank into meditation. At this moment, because of Lin Feng's fast speed, everyone on the Sea God's Island was shocked by the commotion. They all looked over. Then they saw Lin Feng sitting cross-legged on the steps, meditating. It's Feng Ge. He's back. For some reason, Lin Feng did not say anything. However, because he was beside them, everyone felt excited. At this moment, it was as if there was an inexplicable force in each of them, urging them to climb up. This was especially true for Xiao Wu. At this moment, Lin Feng was above her. The two of them were only 18 steps apart. Looking at Lin Feng's quiet back, Xiao Wu wanted to reach his position. Under such motivation, Xiao Wu climbed up step by step. When she climbed to the 188th step, Lin Feng woke up. Then, without saying anything, he did not even look at anyone. He immediately started sprinting. Originally, he was only on the 200th step. In just a few seconds, he surpassed Tang San and reached the 270th step. After all, it was a very high step. The pressure here was already very terrifying, especially the pressure from continuously climbing. Even Lin Feng could not withstand it. In the end, he retreated 3 steps before he was able to withstand it. After blocking for a short while, the pressure quickly returned to normal because there was no longer a quick sprint. After a while, Lin Feng woke up. His strength had recovered by more than half. Then, without stopping, he continued to rush up. This time, his plan was very simple. He had at least reached the 333rd step. This time, the difficulty was clearly much higher than before. In terms of pressure, it was more than 10 times. When he got out, the experience points he gained should be much higher than the first time. Perhaps not more than 10 times, but at least twice. Chapter 486. As he thought about the experience points, Lin Feng's speed became faster and faster. He reached the 300th step in no time. Perhaps it was because he didn't have many steps this time, but even if it was more than 300 steps, the pressure wasn't much. He continued to ascend rapidly. It only took him 10 seconds to reach the 333rd floor. Not only that, he continued to climb. He only stopped when he reached the 340th step. At this moment, the pressure here had already surpassed all the pressure Lin Feng had faced before. He couldn't move at all on this step, and his body was covered in sweat. After a few seconds, the pressure disappeared, and Lin Feng, who had been holding on, sat down on the step. Lin Feng's stamina and soul power were almost depleted. However, he didn't leave the step immediately. Instead, he meditated while enduring the pressure to strengthen his body. Below, after seeing Lin Feng sitting cross-legged and resting, everyone didn't look at him anymore. Instead, they continued to climb. After a few days of climbing, it took them 1 to 2 hours to ascend each step. They were all holding their breaths. If they were discouraged, they would have to start all over again. At this moment, other than Xiao Wu, Lin Feng, and Xue Qinghe, the others hadn't passed the first test. As for Xiao Wu, she could already go out and rest. However, when she saw Xue Qinghe continue to climb, the competitive spirit in her heart rose. In order to not let Xue Qinghe surpass her, she continued to climb. Her goal was to suppress Xue Qinghe. At the same time, she also wanted to surpass Tang San. Although it was difficult, it was still a thought. Now that the two of them were only 30 steps away, she felt that hope was right in front of her. Just like that, under this kind of competition, everyone worked hard to climb up the ranks. Very quickly, 3 days passed. In the morning, the third person to pass the test was born. He was Dai Mu Bai. He passed the 108th step and received a rank 1 soul power reward, directly reaching rank 69. However, like Xiao Wu, he didn't come down directly. Instead, he continued to climb up. On the afternoon of the 4th day, Zhu Zhuqing was the 4th to pass the test and received a rank 2 soul power reward, reaching rank 68. At this moment, she was very exhausted. She didn't force herself to stay on the steps. Instead, she left the steps and rested for a while before returning. On the 8th day, Ma Hongjun reached the 108th step and passed the test. He received a rank 1 soul power reward, reaching rank 65. On the 13th day, Oscar also passed the test and reached rank 64. Now, only Tang San and Ning Rongrong had not passed the test. The others had already passed. There were only slightly more than 2 months until the deadline set by Lin Feng. Although it seemed very sufficient, the further they went, the more difficult it became. Both of them needed to work harder. The others also accompanied the two of them as they advanced, especially Lin Feng, who had already reached more than 400 steps. After a month, Ning Rongrong successfully reached the 133rd step and passed the test. She received 2 soul power ranks and reached rank 66. At this moment, Tang San had already reached the 313th step and was only 20 steps away from his goal. There was still a little more than a month left. If he wanted to climb up, he would have to work harder. At this moment, Lin Feng didn't know if Tang San could complete it. After all, he knew that the last 20 steps were extremely stressful. According to Tang San's current growth rate, he felt that it was a little difficult. Tang San also knew this. Recently, he didn't talk much and kept climbing up. When he was tired, he would quickly meditate to recover. As long as he recovered, he would continue climbing. He was too hardworking. This kind of hard work wasn't useless. In fact, it was very effective. The medicinal power of the immortal medicine in his body had been completely absorbed. He had clearly just broken through a month ago, but now his soul power had increased again and reached rank 75. This kind of strength allowed him to climb a few more steps. Just like that, a month later, on the 9th day, before Lin Feng set 3 months ago, Tang San finally stepped onto the 333rd step. He received 3 soul power ranks as a reward and directly reached rank 78. He was very powerful. At this moment, Lin Feng was already standing on the 567th step. Xiao had also worked very hard during this period of time. Now, she had actually reached the 300th step. Shui Qinghe was also not bad. He had reached the 248th step, and his strength had reached rank 77. He had increased 2 ranks in 3 months, and this was under the condition that he didn't receive any rewards. This showed his hard work. Zhu Zhuqing also worked very hard and reached the 200th step. One had to know that she wasn't even a soul sage yet. Dai Mubai's soul power rank was higher than Zhu Zhuqing's, but he only reached the 188th step. He was 12 steps away from Zhu Zhuqing. Ning Rongrong reached the 145th step, Ma Hongjun reached the 130th step, and Oscar reached the 123rd step. Up until now, everyone had performed very well. Most importantly, they had all completed the test. Po Zidi and the seahorse Douluo were already astonished by their hard work. After all, this situation had never happened before. Even Po Zidi herself couldn't compare to anyone else among the 9 people. After Tang San completed the test, it was like a signal. Everyone immediately left the sea god's light and gathered in the empty space below. Not bad. You all completed the test in 3 months. Not bad. Furthermore, your strength has improved a lot. Lin Feng looked at everyone and smiled. Previously, Feng Gu said that the god's inheritance would allow our strength to increase rapidly. At that time, I didn't have much of an idea. I thought that this speed would take at least 1 or 2 years. But now, in less than 3 months, I've increased 2 ranks. This speed is too fast, Ma Hongjun exclaimed. His words could be considered to have voiced out the thoughts in everyone's mind at this moment. They didn't think that the test would allow them to increase their strength so much in just 3 months. It was like sitting on a rocket. It was unbelievable. Yes, I've increased 3 ranks. This Sea God's test is too good. If I continue at this speed, by the time I pass all 7 tests, I'll probably be as strong as Soul Douluo. Ning Rongrong was also very happy. It wasn't just the 2 of them. Everyone else was also very happy as they discussed how many ranks they had increased. Tang San didn't answer immediately. He had used up a lot of his energy and was recovering. Not long after, when everyone was talking to their heart's content, he came over and said, I've increased 5 ranks. Everyone was speechless. These words were hurtful, old man. When everyone had only increased 2 or 3 ranks, he suddenly said that he had increased 5 ranks. It was really hurtful. Xiao Wu directly pinched Tang San's waist and said, "No one will think that you're mute if you don't talk." Tang San touched his head and said with a silly face, I saw that you were all discussing this. That's why I said, you're still talking? Xiao Wu tightened her grip. Seeing this, everyone laughed loudly. Soon, Lin Feng said, all right, it's been almost 3 months since we arrived at Sea God's Island. Mr. Destroy actually came a few days ago. He contacted me, but he didn't show up. Now that you've all passed the first test, you can go back first. Mr. Destroy arrived so early. He's so strong. Everyone was surprised. Sea God's Island was very special, and there was a strong person like Poseidon. Mr. Destroy was able to contact Lin Feng without anyone noticing. This was really surprising. All right, everyone, take a rest and recover. We'll be leaving soon, Lin Feng said, clapping his hands. Hearing this, everyone nodded and went to rest. Lin Feng was no exception. He also went to rest. Not long after, Poseidon suddenly appeared in front of everyone. Everyone could sense that special soul power, and they all woke up at this moment. Congratulations on passing the first test. I didn't expect you to pass so quickly. Bai Sai, she looked a little surprised. She had sensed that Tang Sen had passed the test. He was the last one in the group, so she immediately rushed over. Only 80 days had passed, and everyone had passed. She didn't expect this speed. You're too kind. Tang Sen stood up and smiled. Lin Feng, Tang San, and Xiao Wu didn't like to talk when they were together. Usually, Tang San was the one who spoke. Poseidon smiled and said, since you have finished the first test within a year, you have 2 choices. The first choice is to rest. You can wait until you have rested enough or until you have completed the test for a year before the second test begins. The second choice is that I'll start the second test for you now. Earlier, the Seahorse Doll had told everyone that the subsequent trials would be issued immediately after the conclusion of the previous trial. However, that was only under normal circumstances. If Poseidon was involved, the time and type of the test would change. Head Reverend, we'll choose the first choice. Tang Sen said, oh, how long are you going to rest? Poseidon asked, we're not resting. We're going back to Heavendo City. You're going to leave? Poseidon raised her voice. She knew that everyone would rest for a while, but she didn't expect them to leave Sea God's Island and return to Heavendo City. After the meeting, they decided not to open Sea God's Island to the public. After all, Tang San and the others were taking the test on the island. To prevent any unexpected changes, they sent people to announce that the island would be closed. This sounded like a troublesome matter, and it would damage Sea God's Island's reputation. But that wasn't the case. All they had to do was say that this was the Sea God's will. The soul masters in the coastal cities and the island were all believers of the Sea God. This kind of statement wouldn't affect the Sea God's reputation at all. That's right. Tang Sen nodded. When he saw Poseidon's expression change, he continued, don't worry, Head Reverend. We're just going back to take care of some matters. We should be back in a month or 2. We won't delay the test. Poseidon felt a little uncomfortable when she heard this, but she couldn't stop them from leaving. So even if she didn't want to, she didn't say anything. She nodded quickly and said, all right, be careful and come back as soon as possible. If you don't make it in time for the test, you'll lose your lives. She wasn't worried that they would run away. She was worried that they would encounter danger on their way back. If they died because of this, Poseidon would feel that it wasn't worth it. Then we'll take our leave, Head Reverend. Everyone had recovered some strength by now. Now that Poseidon was here, they didn't want to stay any longer. Instead, they headed to the north of the Sea God's Island. Lin Feng said that Thanos was waiting for them on the beach in the north. So everyone headed there. Sure enough, it didn't take long for everyone to see the white-clothed and white-masked Thanos on the beach. Feng Ge, there's so many of us. How is Mr. Destroy going to bring us back? Xiao Wu whispered to Lin Feng. Don't worry, there's a way. Lin Feng smiled. Soon, a group of people arrived in front of Thanos and greeted him. Then, Thanos waved his hand, and a boat the size of a living room appeared in front of everyone. Then he said, get on. Everyone nodded and jumped on. In the next second, a pair of thunder wings appeared on Thanos' back. He held the head of the boat with one hand. After looking at the forest behind everyone, he flapped his wings and flew up into the sky with the boat. In the forest, Bai Saishi's figure slowly appeared. his face full of disbelief. I've been discovered. Her purpose was simple. She was here to secretly send Tang San and the others off. At the same time, she was curious about who would come pick them up. She didn't expect to be discovered. After all, they were on the sea god's island. Poseidon had used the island's special divine power to hide herself in the forest. Logically speaking, no one in Douluo's world should have been able to discover her. However, she had still been discovered. So, Poseidon was very surprised. She didn't know how Thanos had appeared before. She felt that he was very powerful, but she didn't notice him at all. It was really shocking. In fact, Thanos had appeared not long before everyone arrived at the beach. He had teleported there. As for how he was able to discover Poseidon in the end, he didn't discover her at that time. Instead, he had discovered that Poseidon was following them when they left the island in the middle of the island. So, he had used Thanos' identity to look over there. His purpose was to deter her. Chapter 487. This deterrence was mainly a signal to Bai Saishi, telling her that Tang San and the others also had someone backing them. In addition, Lin Feng and Tang San had passed the 9 sea gods tests. With these two reasons, Poseidon would definitely place great importance on them. As long as they did the right things, Lin Feng and the others could easily bring Sea God's Island under the Soul Master Alliance. That's right, this was Lin Feng's ultimate goal. After all, this was a group of people with faith. They believed in the Sea God. If Lin Feng wanted to use force to subdue Sea God's Island, it would be impossible. He reckoned that Poseidon and the others would fight to the death with them. Hence, in order to completely subdue Sea God's Island, Lin Feng had to come up with a plan. Not to mention the shock Poseidon on the Sea God's Island. At this time, Thanos took everyone and flew forward in the air. In the end, it only took them around an hour to arrive above Heaven-Do City. This kind of lightning-like speed obviously shocked everyone. When they went to Sea God's Island, it took them several days. Now, they only took an hour to return. The difference between the two was too big. However, now that they were back in Heaven-Do City, everyone was shocked. This was because they realized that Heaven-Do City seemed to have changed for 3 years, even though they had only been gone for 3 months. There were close to 30% more Soul Masters walking on the streets. This was mainly due to the fact that there was an official shop opened by the Soul Master Alliance every few streets in the surrounding buildings. There were all kinds of things sold, but without exception, they were all traded with contribution points given by the Soul Master Alliance. Evidently, after Lin Feng and the others left, the Soul Master Alliance was still developing on the right track. In 3 months, the influence of contribution points had spread throughout Heaven-Do City. As for other places, Lin Feng wasn't very sure because he hadn't seen them before. However, if they really developed according to plan, the contribution point system should be used in all the cities where the Soul Master Alliance had a branch. With a hint of anticipation, they arrived at the Soul Master Alliance. I was too careless. When they were in the city, everyone felt that Heaven-Do City had changed greatly. However, after seeing the headquarters of the Soul Master Alliance, they finally understood what a change was. The square had been refurbished, and the levels were more distinct. The original hall had also expanded a lot. The most important thing was that the various department buildings that the Soul Master Alliance had planned were also much larger. In particular, the number of people in the headquarters had increased by several times. Under such circumstances, the headquarters of the Soul Master Alliance became the most prosperous place in the entire Heaven-Do City, and perhaps even the entire Douluo continent. Everyone was surprised by this, but Lin Feng was not too surprised. The reason for that was because he knew all of that. In fact, many of those things were arranged by him back then. After all, 3 months had passed. After completing the test, he had been farming EXP on Neptune's Light. Every month, the Soul Master Alliance would hold a monthly test. At that time, Lin Feng would make a special trip back to preside over the monthly test and farm experience points. After all, Lin Feng would disappear from the Sea God's Island for a period of time every day, so it was normal for him to disappear for a few days. Speaking of which, in the past 2 months, Lin Feng would spend 3 or 4 hours every day looking for the deep-sea demon whale king. However, after so long, he had not even seen the deep-sea demon whale king's face. Regarding this, Lin Feng guessed that there were 3 possibilities. First, the deep-sea demon whale king was not in that sea area at all, so no matter how hard he searched, he could not find its location. Second, the deep-sea demon whale king might be sleeping most of the time. Perhaps it would only surface once every 6 months, a year, or even several years, so he could not find it. Third, it was purely his own bad luck. Perhaps the deep-sea demon whale king had already floated up while he was searching, but he just missed it. Among these 3 possibilities, Lin Feng guessed that it was most likely the third one. After all, according to the original book, the deep-sea demon whale king should be in the demon whale sea area. Moreover, this old beast should not be so lazy. Otherwise, the demon whale sea area would not be so dangerous in the navigation world if it did not come out for several years. Therefore, the third possibility was the most likely. The reason why he could not find it was just that his luck was bad. Lin Feng even wondered if it was because of the protagonist aura. Should he think of a way to bring Tang San with him next time? In this way, there should be a higher chance of encountering that whale. Thinking of this, the group arrived at the Soul Master Alliance's hall. Now, the people in the Soul Master Alliance were wearing relatively uniform and had a token at their waist. Lin Feng and the others, because they came in a hurry, their clothes were a little special, so not many people recognized them. Regarding this, everyone did not care too much and continued to look at the current situation of the Soul Master Alliance. Half an hour later, everyone had a new understanding of the Soul Master Alliance's development. This development is too fast. I just took a look at the laboratory. There are so many apprentices now. The Tang sect seems to have moved there too. Oscar sighed. Yes, my Tang sect's disciples are more dexterous. They moved here to help their teachers and increase production efficiency. These are all things planned. Tang San said with a smile. He knew that this was part of the plan, but that was half a year of planning. Now it was completed in 3 months. In other words, the efficiency of the plan had doubled. This was too shocking. After hearing Tang San's words, everyone was very surprised. This is great. In the future, if the laboratory has any ideas, as long as we draw a rough blueprint, we can start experimenting. If it was in the past, designing something not only required strict calculations, but also many experiments. But now that the Tang sect was beside them, they could basically do anything they wanted to do very quickly and save a lot of time. At this time, some elders also noticed the arrival of everyone and immediately rushed over to report on their work. Previously, Thanos had been listening to these reports. He had made the most appropriate arrangements based on the data. It was also because of this that the Soul Master Alliance was formed. Now that Tang San had returned, he was the official alliance leader of the Martial Soul Alliance. Everyone naturally had to report to him. The Vice Alliance leader, Ning Fengji, also ran over to report some things to Tang San. Simply put, the Soul Master Alliance's situation was very good after Thanos' meticulous control. Not only were branches opened in half of the Heaven Do Empire's cities, but the contribution point system had also spread throughout the Heaven Do Empire. At this speed, the Soul Master Alliance would rule the entire Heaven Do Empire in half a year at most. Apart from this, Ning Fengji also reported on the situation of the various departments. He wanted everyone to understand the current situation of the Soul Master Alliance. Not long after, even the Grandmasters came. The news he brought was about soul tools. First, there was good news. Signal transducers had already spread throughout the Heaven Do Empire. Of course, this spread didn't mean that they could go to every place. These signal transducers were mainly built in the major cities and beside the public roads. Because of this, only these places had signals. If one went to other places, there would be no signal. Lin Feng wasn't surprised by this. After all, it was very difficult to cover every place. In his previous life, even in the Huan Nation, there were some mountains and forests where there was no signal. There was no need to talk about the Free Empire. Apart from the major cities, there was no signal if one went a little further. It was already very good that the Soul Master Alliance could maintain a signal on the public roads and in the major cities. They would continue to work hard and find more soul masters who could fly for long periods of time. With their help, it wouldn't take long for them to cover the entire Heavendo Empire. Apart from this, the laboratory also created many other things. For example, there were multi-purpose storage devices for contribution points. This was something that Lin Feng had mentioned to them a long time ago. It was to improve the storage and usage of contribution points. Originally, Lin Feng thought that it would take half a year to develop it. He didn't expect that a finished product would be produced now. Furthermore, it was already being tested on a small scale. According to the number of people using contribution points in the Heavendo Empire, this technology would completely replace the original gold soul coin system in the world of soul masters. When that happened, it might affect the interests of all the aristocrats in the Heavendo Empire. There might even be people who came to deal with them. However, Lin Feng didn't panic at all. After all, he had the strength. It just so happened that he didn't have an excuse to take over the Heavendo Empire. As long as these aristocrats dared to deal with them, he would have an excuse to take over the Heavendo Empire. Oh yes, apart from these things, the Grandmaster also brought everyone a big surprise. After researching countless soul masters, the Grandmaster already had an idea about the soul power viewer. He estimated that he would have a result in less than a month. Regarding this, Lin Feng, Tang San, and the others expressed their strong support. This thing was too powerful. If it was really publicized in the world of soul masters in the future, there wouldn't be any major conflicts in the future. After all, when that happened, a person's strength and rank would be directly revealed, just like their identity information in an online game. Because of this, many duels between soul masters that were about to break out would quickly come to an end due to the disparity in strength between the two parties. The Soul Master Alliance's report lasted for more than an hour. After that, everyone had a clear understanding of the Alliance's situation. After that, everyone dispersed and went to find their own things to do. As for Lin Feng, he brought Xiao Wu back to Notting City. After all, he hadn't seen Xiao Ying, Erming, and the rest for a long time. Lin Feng also hadn't helped Ai mature for a long time. Now, he had to go back and explain things. After returning from Notting City, the Soul Master Alliance's monthly test was about to begin. Lin Feng was very attentive towards things related to experience points. As Thanos, he had always been personally involved in this matter. Just as the Soul Master Alliance was preparing for the monthly test, Yu Lumian snuck into Martial Spirit City. Yu Lumian was the second in command of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan. He was a very ambitious person. He was the one who told the Martial Spirit Hall about the Soul Master Alliance. And now, he came with another piece of news. The news was very simple. He had only just discovered it. The Alliance leader, Tang San, Lin Feng, and the rest seemed to have disappeared recently. Combined with the fact that he had to listen to a long report after returning, Yu Luomian guessed that Lin Feng and the rest must have gone on a long journey and only returned recently. Under such circumstances, he immediately had to tell Bibi Dong and the rest. Martial Spirit City had been too quiet recently. Back then, they were scared out of their wits by Lin Feng. Now, they didn't even dare to go out of the city gates. Now that Yu Luomian told Bibi Dong this news, he could act as a spy. As long as he discovered that Tang San and the rest had left again, Yu Luomian could inform Bibi Dong to attack. After all, Tang San and the rest had been gone for too long. As long as Bibi Dong seized the opportunity, he would definitely be able to deal a heavy blow to the Soul Master Alliance. Yu Luomian thought that he could exchange this information for many good things. However, he didn't expect Bibi Dong to not care about this information at all. Bibi Dong was very clear that with her current strength, she couldn't defeat Lin Feng. After all, she had resisted Lin Feng with the help of the Thousand Dao Stream. Now that she was going to fight him alone, she would be courting death. Therefore, regardless of whether it was a trap or not, Bibi Dong only had one thought now, and that was to become a god. Only by becoming a god could her strength improve qualitatively. Only then would she have the capital to deal with Lin Feng and the Soul Master Alliance. If she didn't break through and went out rashly, she would be courting death. After all, it was too risky. Even Bibi Dong couldn't believe Yu Luomian's words. What if the other party was baiting them? The Soul Master Alliance had specially sent Yu Luomian over to warn them to launch a sneak attack. At that time, they would be surrounded the moment they attacked. It would be difficult for them to escape. They were basically doomed. Therefore, Bibi Dong didn't take Yu Luomian's words seriously and quickly chased him away. Yu Luomian was dumbfounded by the coldness of the martial spear hall. In his opinion, this information was extremely important. At least he could exchange it for a soul bone. However, he didn't get anything. On the way to Martial Spirit City, he was still very difficult. Now that he was chased away, he really had nothing. Although he was uncomfortable, he didn't dare to say anything. After all, the one who wanted him to leave was Pope Bibi Dong. Although he couldn't defeat Thanos, it would be easy for him to kill a weakling like him. Just like that, Yu Luomian rushed towards Heaven-Do City with a stomach full of anger. However, what he didn't notice was that Douluo was patrolling high up in the sky. His whereabouts, including entering and leaving the city, and even where he went, were all recorded. Chapter 488. Yu Luomian was the second in command of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan. Even though Douluo and Bai Shuyan were reclusive powerhouses, they still recognized Yu Luomian. Now, that Yu Luomian dared to get so close to the Martial Spear Hall and even entered Martial Spirit City, it was too deliberate. With that in mind, he didn't hesitate. He quickly took out his soul phone and called Ning Fengji. Because Tang San and Lin Feng had gone to the Sea God's Island before, and the identity of Slayer Lord had also found an excuse to leave. So during this time, the deputy leader, Ning Fengji, was in charge. Alliance Master Ning, I discovered that the second in command of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan, Yu Luomian, has entered Martial Spirit City. What? Yu Luomian has entered Martial Spirit City? What's going on? Hurry up and tell me. Ning Fengji was astonished. When he picked up the call, he immediately rushed over to Tang San to report this matter. After all, this matter concerned the second in command of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan. It was urgent, and he couldn't handle it well. At this time, Bai Shuyan also reported the details of Yu Luomian's situation. An hour ago, I discovered when Ning Fengji heard the news, he also came over to Tang San. Just like that, 5 minutes later, Tang San also learned of the situation. He immediately took out his phone and called Lin Feng. Originally, there was no signal coverage in Nodding City, but this time, Lin Feng went back with Xiao Wu and set up a signal adapter. In this way, the phone service covered Nodding City. At this time, Lin Feng and Xiao Wu were playing with Xiao Ying, Erming, and Little Moon in Nodding City. Lin Feng gave the three of them a phone each. With this thing, they could call him Xiao Wu and Tang San at any time. Lin Feng thought about it. This time, he was going to connect the signal adapter to the Sea God's Island. Although Oceanic City was very far from the Sea God's Island, there were many small islands on the road between the two places. As long as he set up a signal adapter, it would be enough. After becoming stronger, Lin Feng's spiritual power could cover a lot more. If he used the 1,000 Trickster Ruler to build the adapter, the range would be more than double. Under these circumstances, there was a high chance that he could make a call from Nodding City to the Sea God's Island. Suddenly, Lin Feng's phone in his pocket. He pressed the answer button and asked, "Who is it calling?" Because the mobile phone service was not very standardized at the moment, and there was no such thing as a number, mobile phones were currently using serial numbers to communicate. You can just call number. This method was very convenient for now, but Lin Feng knew that it was only suitable when there were few people. The phones hadn't been put on sale yet, and they were only for internal use. However, once the phones became commercially available, countless ordinary people would have phones. If they were to use them according to their serial numbers, then there would be all kinds of problems. For example, the numbers were arranged in order, so it was very easy to guess the numbers of people who had just bought phones. When the time came, ordinary people would try to dial these numbers out of curiosity, and it would be very troublesome. Also, if a phone broke, they would have to buy a new one, and the old number wouldn't be able to be used anymore. In any case, there were many problems. Aside from that, there was also the problem of how to make a call at the same time. All of these problems had to be solved in advance in the laboratory. Only by solving these problems would it be easier and more convenient for them to be commercially available. Phone Go, it's me. When are you coming back to Heavendo City? Something big has happened in the Alliance. Tang San's voice sounded from the phone. Something big? What is it? Lin Feng immediately asked. Eagle Douluo just called Uncle Ning and told him that the second-in-command of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan, Yulongyan, seems to have betrayed the Alliance and entered Martial Spirit City. Yulongyan? Lin Feng faltered slightly upon hearing this. I don't think I've heard of him. Yulongyan was a very unfamiliar name to Lin Feng. If it weren't for the fact that Tang San had told him that he was the second-in-command of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan, he wouldn't have any recollection of him at all. That's not important. What's important is that this person has already come into contact with Martial Spirit City, so there's a very good chance that he's betrayed the Alliance. On top of that, he's the younger brother of Chairman Yu, so I don't know what to do, Tang San said in a troubled manner. If Tang San were to take care of external matters, then he would have been able to take care of them very easily. However, this was an internal matter, and Tang San was completely at a loss for what to do. All right, I understand. Gather all of the elders and the chairman. We'll hold a meeting in 2 hours. After that, Lin Feng hung up the phone. Meanwhile, within the Alliance, Tang San and Ning Fengji quickly went to gather everyone. Even though they were given 2 hours, the two of them only took an hour at most to gather everyone who was supposed to be there. Meanwhile, Lin Feng wasn't in a hurry at all. He took Xiao, Ying, Erming, and the others to play for a while longer before sending them back to the academy. After that, Lin Feng and Xiao Wu quickly rushed toward Heavendo City. Not long after that, Lin Feng arrived at the conference hall within 2 hours. However, the person who had followed him here wasn't Xiao Wu. Instead, it was Thanos. No matter how much weight Lin Feng's words held, they couldn't hide the fact that he wasn't strong. In everyone's eyes, the main reason why Lin Feng had such a huge say in the Soul Master Alliance was because of Thanos. If it weren't for Thanos and the Marvel family behind him, Lin Feng wouldn't have been much of a threat to them. Even Tang San, the Alliance leader, wouldn't have been convinced. That was why Lin Feng brought Thanos along when he came over. This way, whatever Lin Feng said later would represent Thanos. Greetings, Elder Mia. After seeing the two of them enter, the group of people in the room immediately bowed. This wasn't because they were forced or for any other reason. It was because everyone respected Thanos from the bottom of their hearts. After all, he was really too strong. In the monthly exam last month, Thanos defeated 10 people by himself. It wasn't 10 Soul Douluo, but 10 Title Douluo. They were all Soul Masters above rank 95 and were extremely powerful. The most important thing was that Thanos Overlord actually won. Although the main reason was that Thanos Overlord's speed was too fast and destroyed the core of the 10 people at once. This kind of strength was still terrifying. You're all too polite. Take a seat. Thanos chuckled and sat down on a chair. At the same time, Lin Feng came in front of everyone. Without wasting any time, Lin Feng looked directly at the head of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon, Yu Yuanjin. Master Yu, where's your second-in-command? Yu Yuanjin stood up and replied, My younger brother, Douluo, went to the south to inspect the cities for the sake of the family. He hasn't returned yet. Are you sure? Lin Feng asked with narrowed eyes. Of course, Yu Yuanjin replied with a confident expression. My younger brother has been managing the family very well recently, and he'll definitely return with good news on this occasion. After hearing this and observing Yu Yuanjin's expression, Lin Feng was almost certain that this guy didn't know about Douluo Mian. That's right. Lin Feng's main objective was to test Yu Yuanjin and see if he was the one who had ordered Douluo Mian to do the deed. If that was the case, then the committee would immediately start selecting new members, and there would be no need for the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan to exist. It wasn't that Lin Feng was bloodthirsty and wanted to destroy the entire Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan. Instead, he hated traitors. He wasn't going to kill them. Instead, he was going to cripple their martial souls and soul power. From then on, these people would be able to live their lives as normal people. After this test, Yu Yunjin most likely didn't know about this, so there was no need for him to do anything to the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan. But I heard from Elder Fei Ying that the second-in-command of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan, Douluo Mian, has just emerged from Martial Spirit City, and it appears that he's colluding with the Martial Spear Hall. Lin Feng recounted the events that had transpired, and Yu Yunjin's face was flushed red with embarrassment. At this point, Yu Yunjin had already begun to view the Soul Master Alliance as one of his own. Not only had his Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan become the chairman of the Soul Master Alliance, they had also obtained many treasures. As such, Yu Yunjin was extremely embarrassed that his second-in-command had been humiliated. Yu Yunjin opened his mouth, but didn't say anything in the end. However, he quickly said, "Abbot Lin, this is all due to my negligence. I didn't discipline my younger brother well, and if any consequences arise from this, my Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan will take full responsibility. We won't cause any trouble for the Soul Master Alliance." Yu Yunjin was a very principled person, and he didn't even try to verify this matter. After all, Fei Ying was the one who had said this, and he was a titled Douluo, so there was no way that he would be spouting nonsense. It was because of this that Yu Yunjin decided to take full responsibility for this matter. Lin Feng nodded upon hearing this. This Yu Yunjin was a smart person, and he knew how to speak and do things. In just a few sentences, not only had he protected his younger brother, he had also taken full responsibility for this matter. Unfortunately for him, Lin Feng had no intention of letting Douluo Mian off the hook. After all, the Soul Master Alliance had always been smooth sailing ever since it had been established, and there hadn't been any danger. All of them had become complacent, and now a traitor had appeared. As such, he had to make an example out of Douluo Mian in order to make an example out of him, as well as to increase the cohesion of the Soul Master Alliance. With that in mind, he said, "Don't be in such a hurry to take responsibility, Master Yu. Our Soul Master Alliance is very particular about the collective will of the Soul Master Alliance, but that also depends on the timing. Now that your Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan has a second-in-command who colluded with the Martial Soul Hall, he should be the one to bear the punishment. How about this? I'll ask Fei Ying Douluo to confront Douluo Mian, and if this is true, we'll cripple Douluo Mian's martial soul and soul power and kick him out of the Soul Master Alliance. What do you think?" Yu Yunjin's brows furrowed slightly upon hearing this. In all honesty, Yu Yunjin was already very happy that Douluo Mian wasn't killed. He was worried that Douluo Mian would commit suicide. As his older brother, he was very familiar with Douluo Mian's personality. If they really crippled his martial soul and soul power, there was a very good chance that Douluo Mian would go insane. "This is fair." Yu Yunjin nodded. Lin Feng's words were far too fair, and Yu Yunjin had no intention of finding fault with him. Lin Feng immediately called Fei Ying Douluo and told him to come back with Douluo Mian. The Flying Eagle Douluo already had a plan in mind for such a situation. He immediately rushed towards the Jade Luo crown as soon as the situation unfolded. Elder Fei Ying is very fast, so it won't be long before the two of them return. Lin Feng turned to everyone with a smile as he spoke. "I've gathered everyone here today to discuss the matter of the traitor. We've already taken care of half of it, and I'm sure it won't be long before the rest is taken care of. And now, I'm discussing the next monthly test with everyone." The monthly examination hadn't been set in stone for the past few years. Instead, they would adjust their strategies from time to time based on the situation. Evidently, Lin Feng already had an idea in mind, and he was just using this opportunity to say it out loud. Everyone could listen to the explanation without worry, but Yu Yunjin was a little distracted. He only hoped to see Fei Ying Douluo and his younger brother as soon as possible. Right now, Yu Yunjin wanted to ask why they had to collude with the Martial Soul Hall. In the Martial Soul Alliance, the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon clan had learned many things that they didn't have before, and they were very optimistic about the Alliance's future. Furthermore, they were a part of the committee. When the Alliance completely unified the continent, their clan would be considered to have made a contribution to the alliance. After all, they had accompanied the alliance since its inception, and this was a great contribution. But today, everything that Yu Engine had painstakingly accumulated was lost to Luo Mian. Yu Engine was very conflicted about this. Just like that, more than half an hour passed quickly. Suddenly, Feiying Douluo returned with Luo Mian at the entrance of the conference hall. At this moment, Luo Mian wore a horrified expression. At the same time, he was also a little dumbstruck. He had no idea what was going on. After leaving Martial Soul City, Bibi Dong's distrust had made him very uncomfortable, and he was about to find a city to drown his sorrows in. However, not long after he left, he was captured and flown to Heavendo City. After flying for over an hour, he was finally tossed into the conference hall. Alliance leader, Luo Mian, has been captured. Feiying Douluo cupped his fist in a salute toward Tang San. Thank you for your hard work, Douluo. Take a seat and rest. Tang San rose to his feet with a smile. Feiying Douluo wasn't Lin Feng. He had been flying for so long, and he was carrying someone, so he was very tired, and he immediately sat down to rest. Meanwhile, Luo Mian was looking at the group of people glaring at him, and he was feeling very unwell. Chapter 489. Luo Mian was in a bad mood. Then he was caught, and now he was facing a group of people who were glaring at him. At the same time, he was very nervous. Did they find out about him? Otherwise, why would it be like this? Luo Mian was not very smart. When the Soul Master Alliance was developing, this guy went to the Martial Soul Hall. Anyone with a normal brain who could see the situation of the continent clearly would not make such a stupid choice. However, not only did Luo Mian do it, he did it twice. He was really stupid. Let me ask you, did you go to the Martial Soul City? Yu Engine looked at Luo Mian and asked with a trace of hope. He knew that Luo Mian's personality had become a little dull because he could not break through. However, Yu Engine still could not believe that this guy would go to the Martial Soul City to collude with the Martial Soul Hall. This was too shocking. Martial Soul City? What Martial Soul City? I went to Anfeng City. Didn't I tell you before? Although he was very nervous, Luo Mian still pretended to be calm. Elder Feiying has told us everything. You entered the Martial Soul City and colluded with the Martial Soul Hall. Yu Engine said in a low voice. Luo Mian quickly denied. I did not. As a member of the Martial Soul Alliance, how could I go to the Martial Soul City? He was very clear that he could not admit to this, or he would be in trouble. At this time, Douluo said indifferently, when I caught him, he was in the forest less than 15 kilometers away from the Martial Soul City. How do you explain this? Yu Engine's voice was full of disappointment. This must be a misunderstanding. I was just scouting nearby. I did not enter the Martial Soul City. Luo Mian was still trying to explain himself. With his words and the current situation, everyone could see that this guy must have gone to the Martial Soul City. The main thing was that Douluo and Luo Mian did not have any disputes. As a titled Douluo, he had no need to frame a soul sage. So at this time, everyone knew what was going on. There's no need to quibble anymore. You've really disappointed me. Yu Engine shook his head, then looked at Tang San. Alliance leader, the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan will do our best to remedy the consequences caused by Luo Mian. As for Luo Mian, as long as his life is not harmed, he is free to do whatever he wants. After saying this, Yu Engine made up his mind. After all, this was his younger brother. However, if one made a mistake, one had to bear the corresponding responsibility. This was a matter of course. Furthermore, Yu Engine was very supportive of the Martial Soul Alliance. For the sake of the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon Clan's future, it was best to resolve this matter as quickly as possible. Why? Luo Mian was still in a daze because he didn't know what had happened. He couldn't believe that his brother had handed him over to the Alliance Master. However, before he could finish, Lin Feng spoke, cripple his martial soul and soul power, and expel him from the Martial Soul Alliance. It was a simple sentence, but it was like a decree that weighed down on Luo Mian's body, making it impossible for him to say anything. Everyone present felt that this punishment was very normal. In fact, they even felt that it was a little light. Expelling him from the martial soul alliance was the most basic punishment. Crippling his martial soul and soul power was the true punishment. Generally speaking, when dealing with traitors, the soul master world would just kill them. Crippling his martial soul was already a light punishment. At this moment, as Lin Feng's voice fell, Slayer Overlord, who was not far behind him, stretched out his hand. Everyone felt an enormous burst of soul power envelop Douluo Mian. In the next instant, his martial soul appeared on the surface of his body, and his soul power erupted. Crack! Crack! Suddenly, his martial soul emitted a sound as if it was about to shatter. Boom! Following a muffled sound, Douluo Mian's martial soul was instantly shattered, and his soul power seeped out of his body. At this moment, Thanos retracted his soul power. Douluo Mian's martial soul and soul power had been crippled. Right now, he was no longer a soul master. Although his physique was much stronger than ordinary people, he might not even be able to defeat a soul elder in terms of strength. Seeing this scene, everyone was astonished. This was because they had never seen someone cripple someone's martial soul like this before. Douluo Mian was a rank 79 soul sage, and because of the strength of his martial soul, Douluo wasn't a match for him. However, Thanos had crippled his martial soul so casually. None of the elders present could do it. In comparison, they could feel how strong Thanos was. At this moment, Douluo Mian realized that he had become an ordinary person. There was a look of despair in his eyes, and he even looked a little crazy. He opened his mouth, wanting to say something. However, Lin Feng waved his hand in advance. With a surge of soul power, he shut Douluo Mian's mouth, and he couldn't say a word. Committee member Yu, take him away. Lin Feng waved his hand. Yes. Yu Yuanjin immediately grabbed Douluo Mian and left. He knew that Lin Feng had put this matter behind him. Douluo Mian could forget about coming to the Martial Soul Alliance in the future. Everyone else, let's continue discussing the monthly exam. This time, the monthly exam. Very soon, everyone in the conference hall began to discuss fervently. At the same time, in the Pontiff's Palace in Martial Soul City, Bibi Dong was also discussing with Gue Mei and Yu Guan. They were obviously talking about what Douluo Mian had said before. Although Bibi Dong didn't care, it was still important news. Therefore, she was prepared to send Gue Mei and Yu Guan to investigate. If what Douluo Mian said was true, Bibi Dong might change her strategy and slowly nibble away at the Soul Master factions in the Heaven Do Empire. This was a form of probing. If it was a trap, she believed that they would make a move very quickly. If it wasn't a trap, they could use this opportunity to recruit more Soul Masters. If it wasn't true, then they would stick to their original plan and guard Martial Soul City. Just like this, after giving instructions, Gue Mei and Yu Guan went to scout for information. Because they were afraid of Thanos' strength, they didn't dare to ask too much. At most, they only asked some ordinary Soul Masters. At this time, the Soul Master Alliance's monthly exam was held. Lin Feng used Thanos' identity to easily earn experience points. However, because Lin Feng's soul power rank had increased and he had already plundered experience points several times before, Lin Feng only earned a little more than 500 million experience points. Now, he had more than 8 billion experience points. In a few more months, he should be able to break through to a million-year soul ring. He was very happy. He was one step closer to having a million-year soul ring. Now that the monthly exam was over, Lin Feng and the others didn't have much to do in Heaven Do City. Right, the Martial Soul Hall hasn't done anything after I contacted Yulian. This is very strange. Before I leave, I have to go over and knock some sense into them. With that thought, Lin Feng turned into Thanos and went straight to Martial Soul City. At the same time, Gue Mei and Yu Guan returned to the Pontiff's Palace and reported the news. Your Majesty, after our investigation over the past few days, we found that there's a problem with the Martial Soul Alliance. Their alliance leader hasn't appeared for a long time. He only returned during the 3rd monthly exam. Therefore, Douluo Mian's words are correct. After Gue Mei finished speaking, Yu Guan added, I also found out that Yulumian seems to have been chased out of the Martial Soul Alliance. Maybe he found out that he came to Martial Soul City. Caught. Bibi Dong narrowed her eyes and fell in a deep thought. She was thinking about the Martial Soul Alliance's current situation. Should they start absorbing the strength of the Heaven Do Empire? At this moment, a powerful aura suddenly rose outside the Martial Spirit City. Bibi Dong immediately flew out of the Pontus Palace. At the same time, the various elders also quickly appeared and prepared to gather. Although almost 3 months had passed since then, Martial Soul City had always been in a state of combat readiness. If there was a situation, they would be mobilized immediately. This idea was obviously very good. At least now that Thanos had arrived, everyone realized it. At this moment, Thanos was standing in the air in front of Martial Soul City. He held a long staff in his hand, and his mask reflected the sunlight. It was very eye-catching. Some of you come and fight with me. Otherwise, I'll destroy the Martial Soul Hall. Thanos' slightly hoarse voice sounding very arrogant. At this moment, only Thanos had come, and he said that he would destroy the Martial Soul Hall. No one would believe him. However, because of this sentence, the Martial Soul Hall's people were enraged. And this was the purpose of Thanos. It was to anger these people. Otherwise, they would hide in the city like a tortoise and not come out. With his current strength, he could actually enter Martial Soul City. However, there was still a lot of risk. After all, there were too many high-level soul masters in the city. If he was entangled, his life would be in danger. Therefore, for safety's sake, he would not enter the city. What? I came here alone, and no one from your big Martial Spirit Palace came out to meet me? Seeing that no one came out, Thanos' overlord continued to shout. It had to be said that the pontiff status in the Martial Soul Hall was very high. In fact, many people wanted to rush out just now. However, because Bibi Dong did not say anything, they could only think about it. Why do you have to provoke me with words? I'll fight with you. Bibi Dong shouted softly and rushed directly towards Thanos. Thanos wanted to fight, and so did Bibi Dong. This was because the more she fought, the faster her cultivation speed would be. Especially when fighting with a super expert like Thanos, Bibi Dong's cultivation speed would be faster. You alone are not enough. Douluo, come up and play? Thanos glanced at the top of the mountain in the middle of Martial Soul City and asked. The one who was stopping in the sky was the head consecrator of the Martial Soul Hall, Douluo. Because he was almost killed by a sneak attack last time, Douluo was very cautious at this time. In the face of Thanos' temptation, he was unmoved. He was waiting for Bibi Dong to explore the surrounding situation. Then, when he found the right time, he would immediately attack. You dare to be distracted when fighting with me? Die. As her voice fell, the Rakshasa scimitar in Bibi Dong's hand flashed with a cold light. Her speed suddenly increased by 30%, and she went straight for Thanos' head. Spatial imprisonment. Thanos' eyes suddenly shone brightly, and Bibi Dong's movements were slowed down a little. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Thanos quickly retreated and dodged the attack. This time, Thanos was very surprised. It had only been 3 months. How could Bibi Dong's strength improve so quickly? If he hadn't used his soul skill in that attack, he would have been hit. And that Rakshasa scimitar was a divine weapon. If he was slashed by it, he would probably be seriously injured. Therefore, at this moment, after this exchange, he put away the contempt he had for Bibi Dong and continued to fight with a serious face. At this time, Douluo had unknowingly arrived at the edge of the city gate and was watching the two of them fight from the side. Suddenly, Bibi Dong forced Thanos back with a strike and spat out a huge net, sealing off Thanos' retreat. Douluo, who had been watching the battle for a long time, suddenly teleported behind Thanos and slashed down with the sword in his hand. This joint attack was obviously premeditated by the two of them for a long time. Bibi Dong was controlling, and Douluo was the finishing blow. However, Thanos was already prepared. From the beginning, he had been paying attention to Douluo. Now that he suddenly attacked, Thanos' 8th soul ring suddenly lit up, and he waved his hand at Douluo. In the next moment, a large spatial crack appeared between the two of them. Seeing this, Douluo was stunned. Then he was surprised. He hurriedly stopped his attack and turned to retreat. Previously, Thanos had never used this move. At most, many small spatial cracks would appear around him. Now, the spatial crack in front of him was about the size of a door. If Douluo accidentally entered such a large spatial crack, he would definitely die. Therefore, at this moment, he immediately chose to retreat. Even Bibi Dong didn't dare to attack rashly at this moment because they had never seen such a situation before. They were very cautious about the unknown. In fact, this move was just a variation of Thanos' soul skill. Just like how he destroyed the Jade Crown's martial soul, he knew its core and changed it. There were no other requirements to reach this level, and that was to have extremely high control of soul power. As long as one's control was strong enough, in addition to their own strength, they could basically do anything in the world of Soul Masters. You actually sneak attacked me. Good move, Douluo. Smiling, Thanos suddenly grabbed the sides of the spatial crack with both hands. Following that, he pulled with both hands, and this large spatial crack turned into two large blades. These blades contained the power to cut through space. Although it required a large amount of soul power to maintain it, it was indestructible as a weapon. Chapter 490. This is a new move that I've developed. Both of you can come at me together. Don't say that I'm bullying you. Thanos held two-dimensional blades in his hands, his face full of smiles. To be honest, this move was very cool, but it consumed a lot of soul power. Even Lin Feng could only last for half an hour at most, so he needed to end the battle quickly. As his voice fell, he didn't hesitate and directly attacked. The two blades crossed, and then slashed forward fiercely. Go! The six wings on Thousand Douluo's back flapped. While dodging the attack, she stabbed out with her sword. The tip of the sword overflowed with a cold light, and there was a holy light circulating. It was obvious that Thousand Douluo had used a lot of soul power in this attack. Bibi Dong also didn't hesitate. She waved the Rakshasa scimitar in her hand and slashed at Thanos from the side. These two-dimensional blades were extremely frightening, but Bibi Dong could tell that these things weren't fast, so she and 1,000 Streams were able to dodge them. Moreover, they were holding divine artifacts in their hands, and they were supported by divine power, so they weren't afraid of them rotting. As long as they were careful, they could definitely kill Thanos together. With this thought, the three of them instantly fought together, and it was even more intense than before. The huge soul power fluctuations overflowed, distorting the surrounding space. The elders of the martial spirit hall saw this, and no one dared to step forward. After all, the aftermath was too terrifying. They would probably be seriously injured as soon as they went up, so it was better to just watch. Even Yu Guan and Gue Mei, who had reached rank 95, were very shocked when they saw this scene. Yu Guan lamented, "Old ghost, for years ago, the two of us seem to have fought with this Thanos. I didn't expect that in just 4 years, we are still like this, and he has become so strong." Yes, Gue Mei continued. Back then, the two of us used a martial soul fusion skill and could still suppress him. But now, we probably don't even have the chance to use a martial soul fusion skill. Thanos' speed was too fast. He could fight against two people alone, and he could still dodge and block easily. If Gue and Chrysanthemum were to meet, they would probably be killed in a single move. Not only Thanos, but also Thousand Tao, Flo, and Bibi Dong. The strength of these two people also shocked everyone. They never thought that they would be so strong. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 minutes passed. Suddenly, Thanos shouted, "You two, eat my dimensional slash." His voice was extremely loud. The two-dimensional sabers merged together and slashed forward. Seeing this, Bibi Dong and Douluo thought that he was going to use some kind of ultimate move. Because they were afraid that they would not be able to block it, they quickly retreated and dodged the attack. However, the moment the two sabers merged, Thanos suddenly turned around and ran into the distance. "I've had a good time today. I'm leaving now. See you next time." Thanos' voice drifted into everyone's ears after they had run far away. 1,000 Streams, BB Dong was speechless. Everyone was speechless. They never thought that an expert like Thanos would do such a thing. It was too shameless. However, there was nothing they could do about it other than feel helpless. At this moment, Thanos had already returned to his identity as Lin Feng and arrived at a forest near Martial Spirit City. He did not feel the slightest bit ashamed of running away just now. It was normal to run when you couldn't win. The consumption of soul power from the dimensional saber exceeded Lin Feng's expectations. In 10 minutes, half of his soul power had been consumed. Therefore, for safety reasons, Lin Feng did not choose to continue fighting. Instead, he chose to leave. Furthermore, he also realized that BB Dong's improvement could only be described as terrifying. The speed at which his strength increased was truly shocking. Thousand Tao Flow had also improved quite a bit. At the very least, after familiarizing himself with his moves, it would be extremely difficult for Lin Feng to injure him again. Therefore, in this battle, it was already very good that he could barely tie with the two of them. The main reason was that their weapons were too powerful. That thing was definitely a divine artifact. If it weren't for the spatial crack to block it, he would have been seriously injured if he was scratched. However, today's situation was still quite good. Fighting with two experts at the same time gave him quite a lot of experience points. Thinking about it, Lin Feng glanced at the system notification that had appeared earlier. Ding! After an intense battle, the host has become a well-matched opponent with Thousand Tao Flow and BB Dong. Combat experience has increased. Experience points plus 315164234. A little more than 300 million experience points was not bad. Furthermore, with his attack this time, the Martial Spirit Palace should not make any moves for a short period of time. Even if there were any movements, Lin Feng would not panic because he would install the signal adapter all the way to Sea God's Island. At that time, as long as BB Dong and the others made any movements, Douluo would call him to remind him. Under such circumstances, Lin Feng was no longer afraid of the Martial Spirit Palace. In his opinion, the Martial Spirit City was now stubbornly resisting. In any case, they couldn't do anything. It wouldn't be long before he would be able to obtain his third or even fourth million-year soul ring. At that time, his strength would be enough to defeat the combined forces of BB Dong and Thousand Tao Flow. Thinking of this, Lin Feng didn't stay any longer and quickly rushed to Heaven Do City. At the same time, in the study of the Pontiff's Palace in Martial Spirit City, BB Dong was meditating with her eyes closed. While recovering her soul power, she was also carefully comprehending the details of the battle just now. She had done this before, so her strength had increased rapidly. BB Dong had a premonition that it wouldn't be long before she could break through to rank 100. In fact, in the original Douluo's world, if it weren't for Tang San's appearance, BB Dong would have been the child of destiny. She had twin martial souls and solved the problem of the upper limit of her soul rings. She was also very smart, and her strength had increased so quickly. Her comprehension was also very strong. All of this was enough to support BB Dong to unify the Douluo's world and ascend to the God realm. Therefore, it was very normal for her to improve so quickly. Half a day later, when the sky darkened, Lin Feng recovered and found Tang San and the others. Feng Ge, I've arranged everything in the Soul Master Alliance. We can go to Sea God's Island now. Dai Mubai also said, I have no problems on my side. I went back to the Star Luo Empire before, and everything was settled. If these two had no problems, the others had no problems either. They all said that they wanted to go to Sea God's Island. After all, Sea God's Island was too magical. In 3 months, everyone's strength had increased so much. There was no other place in the entire Douluo's world. Right? Shueqinghe would also go with them. His sixth sense told him that there would be benefits if he went with Lin Feng and the others. Now, it seemed that it was true. The Sea God's Island was simply too powerful. The increase in strength was beyond his imagination. Very well, since we are all ready, let's go. It was unknown when Thanos had appeared beside everyone. Everyone greeted him when they saw him. Taking advantage of this time, Slayer Overlord had already taken out the previous ship. There was no need for him to say anything. Everyone stood on it. After that, Thanos opened his wings and flapped them with force. He quickly brought everyone to Sea God's Island. Of course, on the way, Lin Feng had to land on the ground from time to set up the signal switch. Just like that, the group flew and stopped. After 2 hours, they arrived at Oceanic City. After they arrived, Lin Feng didn't continue to dawdle. He sent everyone to Sea God's Island. "All right, you guys go ahead. I'll set up the signal switch with Mr. Destroy," Lin Feng said. "Okay." Everyone nodded in agreement. Then, they rushed in the direction of the forbidden area. On the other hand, Lin Feng looked at the distribution of islands between Oceanic City and Sea God's Island when he flew over earlier. In the end, he found that if it was a straight line, there was no way to set up a signal channel. He could only take a detour. Thinking of this, Lin Feng started searching the nearby sea areas that were not far away. His goal was to find a way to communicate with the others. This search lasted for more than 2 hours, and it was almost dawn. Fortunately, Lin Feng was lucky and finally found a route. After spending half an hour, he set up all the lines and tested the phone before returning to Sea God's Island. At this time, the sun had just risen from the horizon. Lin Feng took advantage of the sunlight and arrived at the forbidden area of Sea God's Island. Not only did he see Tang San and the rest, but he also saw Seahorse Douluo Oya and Sea God Douluo Poseidon. "Fenggu, you're here. The two seniors have been waiting for a while," Tang San said as he walked over. "It's fine. It's my duty," Poseidon said with a smile. These two seniors were from the 9 tests of the Sea God. She could wait for 1 or 2 years, let alone 1 or 2 hours. "Head Reverend, are you here to inform us of the second test?" Lin Feng asked. "That's right." Poseidon nodded. "The second test is simple. Do you see this ring-shaped sea?" Hearing this, everyone immediately looked around. The ring-shaped sea that Poseidon was talking about was the circular sea that separated Sea God's Island from Sea God's Island. The ring-shaped sea was 200 meters wide. The sea was turbulent, and there were many aquatic soul beasts in it. It was not easy to deal with. At this time, Poseidon continued, "Your test is to pass through this ring-shaped sea. Due to the different difficulty levels of the test, you'll be subject to different restrictions. The 6th black test does not have any restrictions. You just have to pass it. The 7th top test will restrict you from using your strongest soul skill. You can only use other soul skills. As for the last 9 tests of the Sea God, there are even more restrictions. You can only use your physical strength. Your martial soul, soul power, soul skills, and even the soul skills on your soul bones are all sealed. Under such circumstances, you have to break through the seal of Little White, which is a 100,000-year great white demon shark. At the mention of the great white demon shark, a 25-meter-long white shark broke through the surface of the ring-shaped sea. Its slender body was exposed under the sun. Everyone could see its condition. "What a big shark!" Ma Hongjun exclaimed. Ning Rongrong's focus was a little strange. She muttered, "What white skin! I'm so envious." Bai Saishi continued, "This is Little White. During the assessment, although it won't kill you, it will still try its best to stop you. You can choose to start the test today, or you can play on the Sea God's Island for a few months. You can choose to take the test when the 1 year is up." Poseidon gave everyone 2 choices. One was to relax, and the other was to work hard. Everyone had an answer in their hearts. They looked at each other and finally looked at Lin Feng. Obviously, everyone wanted Lin Feng to make the final decision. However, from these people's eyes, Lin Feng could only see fighting spirit. Thinking about it, he turned to Poseidon and smiled. "We choose to start the test now." Then, I announced the start of the test. Poseidon's face was full of smiles. As soon as she finished speaking, light screens of different colors appeared on everyone except Shuechinghe. Black, red, and gold lights shone on the 8 of them. Soon, they turned into pillars of light that shot into the sky. 3 seconds later, the black light dissipated first. Dai Mubai, Oscar, and Ma Hongjun understood the test's information. It was just as Poseidon had said. Other than that, they did not feel anything different. Next, the red light dissipated. The red pillar of light above Ning Rongrong, Xiao Wu, and Zhu Zhuqing suddenly turned into a ball of light and flew towards their bodies. Then, the last soul rings of the three of them appeared naturally and were absorbed by the red light. In the next second, the three of them felt that their last soul skill had been sealed. They could not use it at all. At this time, the golden light above Lin Feng and Tang San's heads dissipated. Like Ning Rongrong and the rest, the golden light turned into a ball of light and attacked the two of them. First, it was Tang San. As the golden ball of light entered his body, his martial soul, soul skill, and soul power were all sealed. As for Lin Feng, he sensed the sealing power, but it wasn't very strong. It seemed like it could only seal those below level 99. This was child's play to him. With a shake of his soul power, the sealing force was blocked by him. Originally, Lin Feng thought that the test would be affected after he blocked the sealing. However, after a few seconds, everything returned to normal. There was no difference at all. It seemed like this test was not difficult for him at all. In fact, even if his entire body was sealed, this test was nothing to Lin Feng. He jumped more than 200 meters. This river could not stop him at all. If he had soul power, it would be even easier for him to pass. At this time, Poseidon smiled and said, "Very good. It seems like all of you have received the second test from the sea god. I'll take my leave first. I'll appear again after you pass the test." After speaking, Poseidon did not stay any longer. He left immediately. At the side, Douluo gestured to everyone to cheer them on. Then he left too. Chapter 491. With the departure of Posedi and Douluo, the second test officially began. The group didn't rush towards the ring-shaped sea. After all, the difficulty of the first test had already set in. They felt that the second test wouldn't be easy either. The second test doesn't seem difficult. We just need to cross the 200-meter wide ring-shaped sea, Ning Rongrong said. Xiao Wu added, "That's right. The second test didn't say that we can't go together. As long as we cooperate well enough, we can all pass easily. Although that's true, this golden light curtain restricts us from flying. We can't even jump high. There's also a 100,000-year-soul beast in the sea. It's not that simple," Oscar said with a frown. The main problem was that the golden light was annoying. They couldn't fly over. Otherwise, the great white demon shark wouldn't be able to fly no matter how powerful it was. Hearing this, Ma Hongjun said, "I also think it's not that simple. We can't fly." Tang San was also frowning in deep thought. His soul power, soul skills, martial soul, and everything else had been sealed. It wouldn't be easy for him to pass through. Dai Mu Bai said directly, "I'll go over and test the strength of this 100,000-year soul beast. As long as it's not too strong, I'll be able to resist it. You guys can go over." Everyone's control of their soul power was very precise. Although they couldn't fly, they could walk on water. That was why Dai Mu Bai thought of the plan to stall the great white demon shark alone. However, at this moment, Lin Feng waved his hand and said, "No need. I'll send you guys over." Everyone was stunned. In their eyes, Lin Feng and Tang San were the same. Everything was sealed. They should have less than 10% of their strength left. So when they were thinking, everyone subconsciously ignored the two of them. "How? Fenggu, your strength is restricted now. Don't try to be brave." Xiao Wu smiled and said, "Fenggu, I'll take you and third brother with me later. I guarantee that you'll be able to reach the other side safely." Xiao Wu had always been protected by her two brothers. Now that she finally had the opportunity to protect Lin Feng and Tang San, she was very happy. "Don't think about it." Lin Feng said, "Get ready. I'll throw you all over later. Xiao Wu will be the first." Throw it over? Fenggu, are you kidding me?" Ma Hongjuan's jaw dropped. The others were also in disbelief. Even Tang San asked, "Fenggu, can this work?" After all, almost 99% of Lin Feng's strength had been sealed. Under such circumstances, it would be too difficult for him to throw them 200 meters away. Because of the golden light curtain above them, their bodies could not fly too high, or they would be bounced back. In other words, Lin Feng needed to throw them horizontally to the other side. Under such circumstances, they could only be thrown over. Moreover, there was a 100,000-year-old great white demon soul shark in the sea. They had to be thrown out fast enough. Otherwise, there was a high chance that they would be intercepted. If it was Lin Feng who was not sealed, everyone felt that he would definitely be able to meet these requirements. But now that everything had been sealed, it was simply too difficult to succeed. I don't know if it will work, but I can try, Lin Feng said with a smile. He was confident in his heart, but because it had not been successfully carried out, he could not say it out loud. Feng Ge, can Fatty be the first? He has thick flesh. Even if he is hit, it won't hurt, Xiao Wu said quickly. Xiao Wu trusted Lin Feng's words unconditionally without the slightest hesitation. Ma Hongjun. Why was it me who was implicated for no reason? I don't want to be the first. I'm afraid of pain. Ma Hongjun resisted in his heart, but he did not dare to refute, because if he did, Xiao Wu would let him know why the flowers were so red. Fortunately, Lin Feng said, Fatty will be the second. Xiao Wu, you have an invincible skill. You will be the first. Okay. Xiao Wu did not say much and nodded in agreement. At this moment, Lin Feng said, all of you come to my side. I will throw Xiao Wu out to attract attention later. I will throw the others over in 3 seconds. Xiao Wu. Feng Ji's words were too hurtful. Xiao Wu was a little sad, but she also knew that because of the invincible golden body, she was the most suitable bait. Now, her invincible golden body could last for about 12 seconds. The 3 seconds that Lin Feng said was too safe. After Lin Feng threw everyone out, she could run over by herself. Yes. Everyone nodded and came to Lin Feng's side. Seeing this, Lin Feng said to Xiao Wu, try your best to hold that shark back later. I will take you away in the end. Yes, I can definitely hold it back. Xiao Wu nodded fiercely. Lin Feng said, Xiao Yao, make all the grilled sausages and let everyone eat. Rong Rong will also buff everyone. Half a minute later, all the preparations were done, except for Oscar and Ning Rong Rong. Everyone else was in good condition. At this moment, Lin Feng said to Xiao Wu, very good. Activate your invincible golden body. Xiao Wu didn't talk nonsense. The soul power in her body vibrated, and she instantly activated her 4th soul skill. A layer of pure golden light screen appeared on the surface of her body. Lin Feng's eyes flashed with a golden light. In an instant, he saw Little White's position in the ring-shaped sea. It was 50 meters in front of them. In the next second, he grabbed Xiao Wu with his right hand, turned half a circle, and threw Xiao Wu directly towards the great white demon shark. Little White. At this moment, Little White was very confused. It saw a group of people standing by the shore and thought that they were going to cross the river together. It had already thought about how to repel this group of people later. Who knew that this group of people didn't play by the rules and directly threw their cards at its head. Although it was stunned, it didn't hesitate. It drilled out of the water and swung its tail, wanting to send Xiao Wu flying. At this moment, Lin Feng had already grabbed Ma Hongjun and threw him from the side. At the same time, Lin Feng also transmitted his voice to Ma Hongjun. Catch Xiao San after you go over. Okay. Following a quick reply, it flew far away. Ma Hongjun spun in the air, his hands turned into flame wings, and landed on the other side of the river with a relaxed expression. At this moment, Little White realized this. At the same time, it was extremely confident in its tail attack, but it actually missed. The moment the attack landed, Xiao Wu directly teleported and rode on Little White's body, entangling it tightly. Who was Little White? That was a 100,000-year demon soul, great white shark. Its strength was incomparably powerful. From its birth until now, other than sea god Poseidon, who else was qualified to ride it? But today, it was actually ridden by a little girl. This was simply a great humiliation. Little White was furious. The soul power in its body surged out, controlling the surrounding water flow and pressing toward Xiao Wu. At this moment, Little White had long forgotten the warning not to kill. It wanted Xiao Wu, this fellow who offended it, to pay with her life. At this moment, Lin Feng had already thrown Tang San over, followed by Dai Mubai and Oscar. One by one, Lin Feng tossed them out easily, as if he was throwing water into the sea. One had to know that this was a distance of more than 200 meters. It was almost like throwing a person horizontally, and it only drew a slight arc. The power contained in Lin Feng's arm could only be described as terrifying. This group of people were soul masters, and their physiques were stronger. Otherwise, if they were thrown by Lin Feng like this, they would probably become a pile of meat paste in the air. Just as Lin Feng was playing Angry Bird by the river, the water flow summoned by little white hit Xiao Wu in the sea. Facing the angry attack of 100,000-year soul beast, Xiao Wu didn't panic at all. Instead, she used even more strength to clamp Little White's body and entangle it. She grabbed onto Little White's dorsal fin with both hands. With the invincible golden body, she was already in an invincible position. It had to be said that Xiao Wu's entanglement was very successful. At this moment, Little White was blinded by anger. In its opinion, only the sea god could stand on its back. Right now, Xiao Wu was on its back, which was an insult. Just as the human and shark were entangled, Lin Feng's hands didn't stop. He threw Xue Qinghe, Ning Rong Rong, and Zhu Zhuqing out one by one. Finally, when everyone was thrown out by Lin Feng, he bent his body slightly and condensed his soul power on his feet. He bent his body, and then his feet suddenly exerted force. Boom! With a muffled sound, the hard ground where he was standing was instantly crushed, and a 3-meter-wide crater appeared. At this moment, Lin Feng's entire body was flying rapidly on the surface of the sea. Like a black shadow, he left behind countless afterimages as he arrived above Little White in an instant. He grabbed with his hand, and Xiao Wu didn't even have time to react before Lin Feng lifted her up. In the next second, Lin Feng landed on the grass on the opposite shore. In front of him, a group of people were looking at him in shock. If being thrown out was shocking enough, then Lin Feng's standing long jump shocked everyone to the point that they didn't know what to say. Lin Feng had jumped more than 200 meters and even pulled Xiao Wu over halfway. If not for the seal, wouldn't he have jumped into the sky? In fact, Tang San had seen Lin Feng's jumping ability a long time ago, but he didn't see it in full. Now that he saw it, the shock in his heart wasn't any less than the others. Just as everyone was shocked, in the ring-shaped sea, Little White sensed Xiao Wu's departure. It instantly looked at Lin Feng and the others on the shore. Damn it! Damn it! That fellow actually ran away. I have to kill her. With that thought, Little White didn't care about the rules anymore and rushed directly toward Xiao Wu. At this moment, Little White was stepping on huge waves and pressing down on everyone. The scene was very impactful. Fengge, that big shark seems to be angry. Its eyes are so scary. After Xiao Wu saw it, she pulled Lin Feng's sleeve. Don't worry, nothing will happen. Lin Feng smiled. Lin Feng didn't make a move. He only summoned the golden light of the 9 trials of the sea god. In an instant, the golden light shone and turned into a barrier in front of everyone. As for the great white devil soul shark, when it hit the barrier, its entire body was sent flying. Fengge, this is? Everyone asked in surprise. They also had that kind of light on their bodies, but the color was different. They didn't expect it to be so useful. At the same time, they didn't know how to use the light, so they were a little curious. This shark is part of the second trial. Now that we have all passed, this shark can't attack us. I'm just using the power of the rules. Lin Feng continued. However, using the rules requires a very strong control of soul power. You guys haven't reached that level yet. So that's how it is. Everyone was enlightened. At this moment, the great white demonic soul shark surfaced from the water and looked at Xiao Wu hatefully, but didn't attack again. I'll let you guys go this time. The next time we meet, I'll definitely teach you guys a lesson. After saying those words, the great white demonic soul shark instantly dived into the water and didn't come out again. This time, it suffered a big setback in the hands of everyone. Next time, it definitely wouldn't be played so easily. After the great white demonic shark left, a loud voice rang in everyone's ears. Congratulations, you have broken through the sea defense line of the 100,000-year soul beast, the great white demonic soul shark king. I announce that you have passed the second trial of the sea god. You are rewarded with a 10% increase in sea god affinity. This was the notification that Lin Feng and Tang San received. They were both rewarded with sea god affinity and didn't have much use. This affinity was to better inherit the sea god's deity position, and then it was something that contained a trace of the sea god's power. In this regard, Lin Feng wouldn't let it fuse into his body. When the blue light lit up, he immediately activated his soul force to isolate this power. Then, he wrapped it up, just like the sealing power from before. At this moment, Tang San's body also lit up with blue light. Lin Feng stretched out his hand and placed it on his shoulder, pulling out the blue energy. Fengge, what is this sea god affinity? Tang San asked. A trace of the sea god's power. After absorbing it, it will make it easier for you to inherit the sea god's deity position. Lin Feng said. Tang San was very smart and quickly said, so in order to prevent me from being affected by the sea god in the future, you help me extract this power? That's right, this thing is not beneficial for you to establish your own deity position, so it has to be removed. Lin Feng nodded. At this moment, the rewards for the others who passed the test were also given out. Oscar, Dai Mu Bai, and Ma Hongjun receive an increase in soul power and a 500-year increase in the age of all their soul rings. It had to be said that this reward was very generous, but the other three received even more generous rewards. For Zhu Zhuqing, Ning Rongrong, and Xiao Wu, although their reward was an increase in soul power by 1 level, the age of all their soul rings had increased by a full 1,000 years. This meant that all 3 of their soul rings were now over 1,000 years. Chapter 492. Ah, look at me. All of my soul rings are at least 1,000 years old. Xiao Wu shouted excitedly. She revealed all of her soul rings at this moment. 3 purples and 4 blacks appeared very dazzling. Ning Rongrong and Zhu Zhuqing also revealed their soul rings when they saw this. All of them were at least 1,000 years old. Dai Mu Bai and Ma Hongjuan's first 2 soul rings didn't change because they only increased their soul rings by 500 years. However, Dai Mu Bai was also very happy. I'm at rank 70. Haha, I just need 1 more soul ring and I'll be a soul sage. Among everyone present, only Dai Mu Bai's soul power had reached the level where he could obtain a soul ring. Among the remaining people, Zhu Zhuqing was the closest. She was now at rank 69. She just needed 1 more rank to become a soul sage. Congratulations, Boss Dai. Ning Rongrong laughed. However, we're not far behind. The Sea God's test has helped us greatly. I think we'll all be able to increase a rank by the end of this year. Yes. This test is awesome. I'm already at rank 66. Ma Hongjun was also very happy. While everyone was happily chatting, Seahorse Douluo and Po Zidi were discussing how long it would take for Lin Feng and Tang San to pass the second test. Head Consecrator, I think they'll take more than 3 months to pass the second test. After all, Little White is a 100,000-year soul beast. He's very strong. Even I'm not his match. With him blocking them, they won't be able to pass the second test in a short time. Douluo said with certainty. This was because he had seen the strength of the great white demon shark. He knew how strong it was. Even if it didn't use its full strength, it would be enough to make them suffer. I don't think so. I feel that they'll take less than a month this time. Po Zidi was deep in thought. She could feel that Lin Feng was very strong. The main thing was that he was very mysterious. She couldn't even see through Mr. Destroy behind him. All of this made her have high expectations for Lin Feng. A month? That can't be. The Seahorse Daw wore an incredulous look on his face as he said, "Is there really someone who can pass a black level examination within a month? I took more than 5 years for the second test." The moment he finished speaking, he was stunned. Poseidon was the same. After being stunned for a moment, his face was filled with uncertainty. Did I sense it? They're done with the second test? At that moment, the chief examiner and the high priest both sensed that Lin Feng and the others had completed the second test. But how long had they left? Not even 5 minutes. How? Because they had completed the test in such a short time, the 2 of them wondered if they had sensed it wrongly. Since the establishment of the Sea God's Island, They had never seen anyone pass the black rank test in such a short time. The black rank test meant that one's life was in great danger. Normally, it would take a few years to pass it, but now this group of people had passed it in just 5 minutes. This made the two of them very confused. They looked at each other. Then, without hesitation, they hurried over to where the group was. When they saw Lin Feng and the others chatting and laughing on the shore, the doubt in their hearts instantly turned into shock. Sure enough, this group of people had passed the second test. They had passed the black rank test in just 5 minutes as a team. This speed was unprecedented. You guys are beyond my expectations. Positi stuttered. Her voice was full of disbelief. Douluo, who was beside her, was so shocked that he couldn't speak. Looking at these people, they had taken 3 months to pass the first test and only 5 minutes to pass the second test. Thinking about himself, he had taken a few years to pass the second test. While he was shocked, Douluo also felt a little guilty. This group of people was too strong. They were much stronger than him. Compared to them, he was a piece of trash. If they were from the same era, they would have inherited the divine throne by now. Head Consecrator, Douluo, you guys came so quickly. The group turned around and saw the two of them. We didn't go far. After we sensed that you guys had passed the test, we came over. Positi explained. Soon, she smiled and said, congratulations on passing the second test. With this speed, you have set the fastest record in the history of the Sea God's Island. Despite his surprise, Poseidon was still a level 99 pinnacle powerhouse. He quickly calmed himself down. She continued, just like before, the third test will be given out by me. You can choose to start the test today or play on the Sea God's Island for a year. When a year is up, you can choose to continue the test. Although Positi knew that everyone would choose to continue the test, she still had to ask. Otherwise, she would be breaking the rules. Is there a need to choose? Of course we'll continue the test. Boss Dai is a soul sage. I'm only 4 ranks away. Of course I have to catch up. Ma Hongjun said loudly. The test had brought about a rapid increase in strength. It was like riding a rocket. It was very comfortable. Hence, everyone was addicted to the test. In order to increase their strength, they wanted to take the test as soon as possible. However, Positi only glanced at Ma Hongjun. She didn't reply. Instead, she looked at Lin Feng and Tang San. She knew that these two were the ones in charge. As for the others, she could just ignore them. Let's continue. We have nothing to do anyway. Lin Feng said. The second test was like a game. There was no difficulty at all. Hence, everyone needed a real test. When Lin Feng spoke, no one objected. Clearly, they all agreed with Lin Feng's decision. Seeing this, Positi smiled. Very well. Then I announced that the third test will begin. As soon as she finished speaking, light shone from everyone's bodies. At the same time, a screen appeared to show everyone the content of the test. However, before anyone could look at it, Positi suddenly said to Dai Mubai, right? Congratulations on reaching level 70. This is your reward. With that, Poseidon flipped her hand, and a crystal-like golden bead appeared in her palm. This golden bead emitted a faint light. Golden mist rolled within it. It looked very mysterious. After the bead appeared, it floated up and came to Dai Mubai. Because this happened so suddenly, everyone's attention was drawn to it. Dai Mubai was stunned. He did not take it. Instead, he asked, "What is this?" Positi smiled and explained, "This is a soul ring bestowed by God. Anyone who comes to Sea God's Island and takes the black rank test or above will receive a soul ring the moment they reach the bottleneck of their soul power. This is a reward from the Sea God. You can absorb it directly. It will give you a suitable soul skill according to your martial soul. As for the age of the soul ring, it is the maximum you can endure. In theory, if you persist long enough, you can even receive a 100,000-year soul ring." 100,000-year soul ring. When they heard this, everyone's faces were filled with yearning. After all, it was the most powerful soul ring in the world of soul masters. As long as you could obtain one, your strength would increase tremendously. If you could directly use a soul ring to obtain a 100,000-year soul ring, it would be a huge gain. Seeing that everyone's eyes were shining, Positi continued, "This soul ring is not limitless. Everyone only has one chance. Make good use of it. Hearing this, Dai Mubai took the god-bestowed soul ring. Pozidi reminded him, before you absorb the soul ring, you'd better recover to your peak condition. Later, use your greatest willpower and physical strength to endure it. This way, the soul ring's age will be higher, and it will increase your strength the most. I'll take note. Dai Mubai nodded. Right now, he wanted to recover quickly so that he could absorb the soul ring. When you're done, I'll take you to the place where the third test will be held, Pozidi said. Okay. After agreeing, Dai Mubai prepared to sit cross-legged and meditate. However, at this moment, Lin Feng walked over and said, Keep it. You're only a soul sage now. It's a waste to use this soul ring. Wait until you reach rank 90 before using it. This god-bestowed soul ring was imprinted with Dai Mubai's soul power, which meant that only he could use it. No one else could use it. Otherwise, Lin Feng would have thought of a way to get it. But if he doesn't use it now, he won't be able to become a soul sage in a short period of time. Seahorse Douluo said, You're all terrestrial soul masters. The soul rings of aquatic soul beasts conflict with yours. Furthermore, they're not suitable for you. If you want to find a suitable soul ring, you'll have to return to the continent. If we take into account the time needed to find a suitable soul beast, it'll probably take at least a month. Now that the third test has begun, the difficulty of the test will increase greatly if we delay it for another month. It won't take that long. A week is enough. Don't worry about it. Lin Feng laughed. He was being conservative when he said a week. This was because he felt that 5 days was enough. 1 day would be used to travel, and the other 4 days would be used to hunt. If they were lucky, they might be able to return in 2 days. They wouldn't delay the test at all. A week? Seahorse Douluo furrowed his brows. Are you going to find him a random soul ring? He knew about Thanos. It was very easy for him to travel from Sea God's Island to the continent's forest and back in a day. However, it was very time-consuming to find a suitable soul beast. Seahorse Douluo had spent more than 2 months looking for his 9th soul ring. He was lucky enough to succeed in hunting it. This was why he said a month's time limit. However, Lin Feng said that he only needed a week's time. He felt that Lin Feng was just giving him a random soul ring. Oh yeah, don't talk too much. Pozidi scolded. No matter what choice Lin Feng made, they shouldn't talk too much. Hence, Seahorse Douluo was scolded for talking too much. At this moment, Dai Mubai was deep in thought. After all, if he couldn't complete the black rank test, he would lose his life. Hence, it was better to be cautious. He asked, Great Consecrator, can you tell us what the third test is about? The message I received was tidal tempering. Follow me. Pozidi turned around and flew in the opposite direction of the island within the island. Lin Feng shouted at Tang San, Bring them along. As soon as he finished speaking, a blue-silver grass appeared in Tang San's hand and transformed into a small boat. He loaded everyone onto the boat and then jumped onto it himself. Tang San then built an arch bridge on both sides of the boat. It extended upwards until it looked like an oversized fruit basket. At this moment, Lin Feng grabbed the handle at the top and chased after Poseidon. Half an hour later, they arrived at the peak of a mountain that was hundreds of meters tall. The mountain peak was bare and completely made of pitch-black rocks. When they reached the top of the mountain, they saw a U-shaped valley facing the sea. The valley was hundreds of meters deep and was filled with hard black rocks. Wave after wave of waves crashed against the walls of the valley, making loud crashing sounds that shook people's hearts. This is where you will be taking the third test. It's called the Raging Waves Impasse. It's one of the wonders of the Sea God's Island. Even 100,000-year sea spirit beasts don't want to come here because the impact is too strong. Even they would feel uncomfortable. Then what's the specific content of our test? Tang Sin asked. Pozidi didn't say anything. She suddenly rose into the sky and pushed her hands forward. In the next second, all her soul rings appeared. 8 black and 1 red. It was shocking. At the same time, a huge humanoid shadow appeared behind her. It followed Poseidi's gesture and pushed forward. In the next moment, the raging waves in the valley calmed down. Lin Feng knew that the shadow, just now, was the sea god. Poseidon's martial soul was the sea god. This martial soul was really strange. While Linfeng was thinking about this, 9 gray pillars appeared on the calm surface of the valley. Xueqinghe didn't need to take the test, but Poseidon had prepared one for him because of Linfeng and Tang San. At this moment, Poseidon's voice sounded. Your test is to stay on the pillars for a certain amount of time. The black ranks 6 test takers 4 hours a day, the top rank 7 test takers 5 hours a day, and the 2 sea god 9 test takers 12 hours a day. The duration of the test is 1 year. In the first half of the year, you have a period of adaptation. You don't have to stay so long, but after half a year, your average time will be this long. If the total time is less than the stipulated time, you will fail the test. Chapter 493. The Sea God's test didn't have a fixed standard. After all, it wasn't a fixed computer program. It could be manipulated. For example, Poseidon said that they only needed to achieve an average duration. Furthermore, they could slack off for the first half of the year. At most, they could make up for it later. Furthermore, even these were not fixed. In the original novel, Tang San would complete the test early if he broke through too much. Hence, the Sea God's test could be manipulated. At this moment, Ma Hongjun laughed and said, I thought the third test would be difficult. It seems like it's not much different from the first test. Because everyone had great control over their soul power, they were very good at taking tests like this. This pillar wasn't much different from a sea god's light. They both stimulated their potential under pressure. With the experience of the sea god's light, they weren't too nervous about the third test. Poseidon said, the first test didn't have any restrictions on you. It wasn't very dangerous either. However, the third test will restrict all of your auxiliary-type soul skills. Furthermore, the waves are very turbulent. If you're hit consecutively, your life will be in danger. Poseidon wasn't exaggerating. The waves were very powerful. If they were hit consecutively, their lives would be in danger. Because of the dangerous environment, I'll be standing by your side when you're taking the test. If you can't take it, just shout. I'll bring you out. After hearing Poseidon's words, everyone became serious. They didn't underestimate the test anymore. Furthermore, they could feel that their auxiliary-type soul skills were restricted. However, Linfeng wasn't affected by this restriction because he once again blocked the seal's power outside of his body. Soon, he said to Dai Mu Bai, this test isn't very difficult. You can go to the continent to hunt for a soul ring first. After that, Linfeng looked at Tang San and the rest. As for you guys, you can experience it here for a few days. We'll be back soon. Yeah, Fengge, you're going too? Everyone felt that it was enough for Thanos to bring Dai Mu Bai along. If Linfeng went, it would be a bit redundant. Linfeng quickly found an excuse and said with a smile, I have something to do when I go back, so let's go together this time. Hearing this, no one asked any further questions. Obviously, they agreed with Linfeng. Dai Mu Bai also nodded, indicating that he agreed with this plan. Seeing this, Poseidon said, Dai Mu Bai, since you have made such a decision, I will not stop you. I hope you can withstand the next test. I will. Dai Mu Bai nodded. Let's go. Mr. Destroy is waiting for us, Linfeng said with a smile. Just like that, Linfeng quickly left with Dai Mu Bai. In the same place, Tang San said, Senior High Priest, let's start now. Sorry to trouble you. After Linfeng left, Tang San became the leader of the group. Okay, I'll send you down. As soon as she finished speaking, Poseidon's body emitted a dazzling blue light. The blue light quickly drilled into the bodies of the 7 people. They felt that their bodies were as light as a feather as they flew toward the 7 pillars below. This pillar was called the Heavy Silver Pillar. It was a powerful material for refining weapons. Moreover, it was several times heavier than gold. It was also very dense. This pillar was estimated to weigh hundreds of thousands of pounds. At this time, the 7 people quickly flew to the top of the Heavy Silver Pillar. The gray pillar instantly emitted a blue light. In the next second, 5 heavy silver rings appeared on the pillar, locking everyone to the pillar. Now the test begins. As soon as Poseidon finished speaking, the blue light in her hand began to dissipate. The calm sea suddenly surged, and huge waves that were dozens of meters high began to crash toward the group. At this moment, the group felt an inexplicable pressure in their hearts. The pressure was not strong, but it made everyone nervous. After all, this was the third test. According to Poseidon, it was much more difficult than the first test. They were still a little nervous. But soon, when the waves hit them, their eyes were filled with surprise. At first, they thought that the impact of the waves would be very terrifying and make them feel a lot of pressure. However, after coming into contact with the waves, the reality was the opposite. The waves were too weak. They could not even feel it at all. However, the crowd soon discovered that this kind of huge wave did not stop for a moment. Instead, it was continuous, one wave after another. Moreover, the pressure of the waves would slowly increase. Perhaps 100 or 200 times would not be a problem. 1,000 or 2,000 times would be okay. However, tens of thousands of times, hundreds of thousands of times, millions of times at that time, the pressure would cause everyone to feel despair. However, due to the different positions of the pillars, the pressure on each pillar was different. The closer to the front, the stronger the impact, and the weaker the impact at the back. Now, Tang San was at the front, Xiao Wu was second, Xue Qinghe was third, and Zhu Zhuqing. Anyway, according to their results in the Neptune's light, everyone was ranked here. In the beginning, everyone thought that the third test was very easy. But after an hour, the impact they faced was very strong. It was not inferior to the Neptune's light at the 100th level. Most importantly, everyone realized that when they were under pressure in the Neptune's light, the pressure came from one direction. The impact from the waves was wrapped around them, and the pressure was not very uniform. It came from left and right, and it was very troublesome. Even though he had a strong control over his soul power, he still felt extremely pressured under such circumstances. As time passed, they gradually could not hold on. After 1.5 hours, Ning Rongrong, who was the weakest, could not hold on and was brought out by Poseidon. After 5 minutes, Oscar came out. After 2 hours, Ma Hongjun came out. After 2.5 hours, Xue Qinghe came out. After 3.5 hours, Xiao Wu came out. As for Tang San, he lasted for 6.5 hours before coming out. Poseidon was so shocked that he didn't know what to say about this ridiculous result. Especially Tang San. It was his first time participating in the test, and he actually lasted for 6.5 hours. It was too shocking. Even Poseidon herself had only been able to do it for a little more than 3 hours, about the same as Xiao Wu. Back then, her strength was comparable to Douluo's, and the strongest person in front of her was only a soul sage. Therefore, Poseidon was very shocked. She guessed that if Lin Feng was here, his performance would be even more amazing. While Poseidon was thinking about this, Lin Feng used Thanos' identity to bring the two of them to the forest in the north. After that, Lin Feng found an excuse to leave, and only Thanos accompanied Dai Mubai to search for soul beasts in the forest. On the surface, it seemed like only the two of them were searching, but in reality, Lin Feng had sent out almost 100 clones to search for suitable soul beasts in the forest. In less than an hour, Lin Feng found a suitable soul beast for Dai Mubai. Of course, Thanos could not say it out loud. He rushed over and coincidentally found this soul beast. In just one day, Dai Mubai successfully obtained his 7th soul ring. This was a 60,000-year multicolored tiger. Whether it was the type of soul beast or the age of its soul ring, it was very suitable for Dai Mubai. However, the older the soul ring, the longer it would take to absorb it. By the time Dai Mubai finished absorbing the soul ring, it was already morning. Just like that, Thanos brought Dai Mubai to find Lin Feng. After that, the three of them quickly returned to Sea God's Island. At this time, everyone was persevering in the heavy silver pillars. Poseidon said that they did not need to work so hard in the first half of the year, and that they could get used to it. However, everyone remembered Lin Feng's words. It was best to complete a test within 3 months. Therefore, everyone was working very hard in the past few days. Apart from resting and recovering their soul power, they spent the rest of their time enduring the impact of the waves. In just 3 days, their improvement was very obvious. Other than the 2 auxiliary-type soul masters and Tang San, Everyone else could endure for more than 4 hours at a time. This improvement could only be described as terrifying. Poseidi's expression of shock never stopped. It cannot be helped. Their control of their soul power was too exquisite. Even if the pressure of the waves spread all over their bodies, everyone was able to adapt quickly. Their endurance was increasing rapidly. When Lin Feng and Dai Mubai arrived, the two of them did not waste any time. They chose a pillar each and jumped over it. Dai Mubai was fine. He chose a pillar in the second row. As for Lin Feng, he didn't hesitate at all. He directly chose to stand in front of everyone to bear the most powerful impact of the waves. This scene was witnessed by everyone. They were very curious to see how long Dai Mubai and Lin Feng could endure the first impact. Just like that, Dai Mubai was pulled out by Poseidi after 3 hours. As he flew through the air, his soul power surged, and he instantly broke through to rank 73. Previously, he had reached rank 72 after absorbing the soul rings. He did not expect to break through again under this pressure. Dai Mubai was very excited. He started to meditate to recover his physical strength and soul power. At this moment, Lin Feng was standing on the pillar in front of everyone. He was very relaxed as he endured the waves. Tidal tempering was different from the sea god's light. Although it squeezed out one's potential, there was still a difference. The effects of tidal tempering were stronger. While it squeezed out one's potential, it could also strengthen one's body. Furthermore, these huge waves were constantly stacking pressure, and each impact would be a little stronger than the previous one. This stacking up pressure would temper one's body and make it stronger. Lin Feng realized that the stacking up pressure was not caused by the waves themselves. Instead, it was caused by the combination of the sea god's island's special power and the waves. If one's body was not strong enough, they would be easily squeezed dry of their soul power and physical strength. They would then have no choice but to withdraw. However, Lin Feng's body was too strong. This level of impact was nothing to him. He would not be washed away. The main reason why he was enduring the impact was not because he wanted to take the test, but because he wanted to experience it. He wanted to experience the power of the sea god and see if he could analyze it. However, 10 hours had passed, and he still did not care. It seemed like it was too difficult for him to analyze the power of the sea god with his current abilities. As he thought about it, he stopped enduring the waves. Instead, he broke free from the heavy silver hoop and grabbed the pillar that weighed hundreds of thousands of kilograms. What was he doing? Poseidi had been paying attention to everyone. When Lin Feng made a move, she noticed it. At the same time, she was puzzled. What was Lin Feng doing? Why did he stop enduring the impact and grab the heavy silver pillar instead? Could it be that he wanted to lift the heavy silver pillar? One had to admit that Poseidon had guessed correctly. Lin Feng was going to lift the pillar. He could tell that the main purpose of the sea god's third trial was to ensure that one had a good body. Lin Feng's current body was clearly stronger than the upper limit of the third trial. What he wanted to do was to show this side of him that was beyond his limits. As long as he could do that, he should be able to pass the trial. With that in mind, Lin Feng unleashed his full strength. He secretly used all sorts of soul skills to enhance his body. His entire body glowed with a faint golden light. In the next second, he exerted force with both hands and suddenly pulled. Crack, crack, boom, boom. Under Poseidi's dazed gaze, Lin Feng actually lifted the heavy silver pillar a little. At this moment, a special soul power fluctuation spread out in all directions with the heavy silver pillar in Lin Feng's hand as the center. The waves of the entire raging wave's despair disappeared in an instant. It was extremely quiet. What happened? Many people closed their eyes and gritted their teeth, waiting for the arrival of the huge waves. But at this moment, they realized that there were no waves. The surroundings instantly quieted down. They hurriedly opened their eyes and soon found Lin Feng at the front, who was lifting the heavy silver pillar slightly with both hands. F***CK. Awesome Feng Ge. This pillar is so heavy. I couldn't lift it at all even when I used all my strength. I didn't expect Feng Ge to lift the pillar. Ma Hongjun opened his mouth wide. Tang San's eyes were also filled with shock. He knew that Lin Feng was strong, but wasn't lifting this 50,000-pound heavy silver pillar a little too ferocious. Po Ziti was also shocked because she knew that the pillar was extremely heavy. Even she had to use all her strength to lift this thing. But how old was Lin Feng? At this moment, he was able to lift it directly. Wasn't his strength about the same as hers? This was completely beyond her expectations. At this moment, Lin Feng didn't lift it for long and quickly put it down. This pillar was really too heavy. If he didn't hide it and used all his strength, he should be able to lift it and walk a few steps. But now, because he needed to hide his situation, being able to lift it was already very good.